Hello, everybody. How am I sounding now? We shouldn't have to ask this every time, but you never know. This game seems to be pretty good audio-wise, but yeah, like I said, you never know. It's all kind of random with my streaming. Anyway, everyone's here, so let me just say, Slava Ukraini wa heroyam slava wa barakatuhu. Ahlan wa sahlan. Great. Let's get going then. Let's play some more co-op. Had a pretty good run today. I kind of wanted to play some other games on here, games that aren't multiplayer, but it's like I said, with each game kind of being different audio-wise, you never know, so I'm kind of keeping track of which games work well with the audio and which don't, because it takes a lot of time just to kind of set up everything, and when you get all this stuff set up, and I remember in the past, like I get this set up, I'm about half an hour into stream or something, and I'm finding out that I'm sounding like I'm, like I'm talking through the speaker on a drive-through at McDonald's or something, So, if you need the experience, I mean, you look at my level on this. I've been doing this for years, so it's like I don't even really care too much. But oh, good, my favorite class. Oh, we're almost on the last objective here. Well, I'll try to. I will tell you this, I don't think I have the right to call myself like an Osint. I mean, Ukraine commentator, of course. Osint investigation, I do have some training in this, and if I would actually take the time to crack this thick-ass book, I know I could do some Osint stuff, but it's very boring, I'll be honest. But yeah, if... maybe in the future, I think, especially since I'll be needing a new job, I'll have plenty of time to hit the books and study some of these, the more complex OSINT tasks. By the way, if you're interested in getting into OSINT, open source intelligence investigation, you need to check out a channel on YouTube called Ben Doe Brown. So Ben Do Brown. It's Ben and then Do Brown. And he does a bunch of these tutorials on all kinds of different OSINT methods, like geolocation, for example, how to tell the time of day that a photo was taken. A lot of really, really technical stuff. So if you want to learn more about that, he's got a lot of tutorials on there, and you should check him out. I would love to collaborate with Laserpig. I absolutely love Laserpig. I like the. He did a great video about the Crusader tank recently. And what I like about Laserpig's videos a lot is, like, I don't really have any opinions about the Crusader tank. I like British stuff in World War II. I don't know why. I guess I'm becoming a Teaboo or something. But what I like about Laserpig videos is it's never just about the main subject there, right? He really branches out. Hang on a second. I'm trying to see if I hear helicopters, because that'll be a problem. Yeah, so he branches out and talks about a lot of related subjects, so you end up hearing, it's like a bonus, you know what I mean? And, oh shit, that is a helicopter, Gotta get indoors. Okay. Good thing we heard that. But yeah, that's so Laserpig has a new video out on Friday, that was yesterday. Adam Something released a video about Ukraine and the Gravel Institute and their awful video about it. And a really cool thing is, I don't know if it was because of this or the rest of the backlash that Gravel Institute got on Twitter, but they made the video about Ukraine and the alleged U.S. funding of neo-Nazis and all this. They made that video private. And again, I don't know if that's because of Adam Something or it's just because of the collective backlash. I'll say it's the collective backlash because I had a part in that. Yeah, I like to claim some credit for that backlash. Drunk singing. About the Javelin song, I think I have heard the Javelin song. I have a wonderful follower and patron. The hell was that? That was one of our own guys. He tried. Oh my god. Yeah, I think the guy, that body right there, I think he tried to. I think he tried to shoot an RPG and hit something or hit someone. Okay, well, it still counts as martyrdom. I'm a shaheed. Let's see what else. ASB News. Yeah, they got banned initially. That was a funny account. A lot of coping from them lately. A lot of great VDV memes recently. We do seem to see, yeah, the Javelins are working very well. They got something like a 93% success rate. So definitely think about investing in Raytheon. ASB News is like a wannabe Osint account that puts out a bunch of pro-Russian propaganda. And what they put in their bio is like, we don't listen to Western propaganda or whatever. And that's basically putting it out there that they absolutely swallow anything from Russian state media. Anytime you see like let's say a so-called independent journalist, and they keep stressing how independent they are, this usually means they're dependent. If they tell you that they don't have an agenda, which is a very common thing, we don't have an agenda, we just report the news, they have an agenda, okay? If they tell you that they're truth seekers and we're going to tell you the truth that they don't want you to know, they're lying. I mean, because here's the thing, if you're a real journalist or you're a real news outlet, you don't need to constantly tell people that you're getting the truth, right? You don't need to say we don't have an agenda. If you're truly a legit news outlet, you're basically implying that what we put out there is the truth, right? Because we care about credibility. And if someone has to keep telling you that, if someone has to keep telling you that, then it's sus, as the Zoomers say. Oh, we got guys in the street. We got a lot of guys in the street. I have an RPG. I'll use that. I guess not. Oh, that's a straggler. Yeah, occasionally with these, if some of these accounts you see online, they claim to be Osint or whatever, they're not always obvious sometimes. You have to kind of watch them, watch their behavior over time, and then you start to notice some of the sources that they rely on, for example, or you see that what they're reporting is just going against all the well-known, well-established Osint accounts. Who is that? Yeah, I don't care about closing the door on him because I think he was shooting me. Daruda Sandstorm. Yeah, I love that song. I unironically love that song. I remember, what was that? Did he just let someone in the door? Oh, yeah, okay, great. Yeah, you're supposed to watch the door. Yeah, I can't believe, when they made this game, I can't believe that they didn't do like a collaboration with Darude, because, it's right there in the name, right? And it would have been really great if they did like a sort of Middle Eastern version of Sandstorm. Don't know exactly how you would do that, but yeah, I saw one of these like Pakistani accounts that they call themselves like Osint something, but you start reading the bio, and I think the funniest thing is it had the definition of Osint in the bio, like open source. It's like, thanks, thanks for telling me what Osint is. No, that I don't think we could handle a state that big. We could handle it, if we broke down Russia into its constituent parts and gave independence to all these national republics. Then we could potentially maybe the U.S. should get Kaliningrad, and that'd be nice because see, one problem with living in the U.S. is that if you want to go anywhere in the old world, it is a Herculean task, okay? Like, for example, I used to, even when the war was on, I used to go between Moscow and Kiev. I used to fly when you could still fly there. And it's a 1 hour and 15-minute flight, right? If I took the train, it's a 12-hour train journey. And then, when I moved to the States, I want to go to Ukraine. Suddenly it's like 11 hours to Istanbul and another 2 hours up to Kiev or something like that. Going through, when KLM was still going there, KLM was nice because the flight to Amsterdam is not too long. And then you get a little bit of, get a little bit of layover, a couple hours in Amsterdam, and so you're not like constantly on a plane forever. Okay, where's that truck? Come on, here we go. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Everyone talk beer now. Okay. Oh, smoke. Okay, that's a problem. The agents of the Taghut are attacking. That's not a talk beer, dude. Talk beer is Allahu Akbar. Yeah, my friend in the territorial defense in Kiev. Yeah. Okay, when does Abu Hajar ever do a nice shot, though, right? But anyway, no, I'll say my friend in the territorial defense in Kiev, his nickname is Takbir. He's on Twitter too. You've probably seen me interact with him. He's, because he's actually in the city. He's fairly safe for now, and we hope it stays that way. Russians have been pushed back from Kiev on both axes basically. So the main issue in the city is cruise missiles and airstrikes and stuff like that. But the thing is, Russia's running out of their cruise missiles. So we'll see what happens then. I got a little over a week before I get there, and inshallah everything goes well, and hopefully I'll be in Kiev or near there very soon. It's a city that I've been visiting, and I've lived in it too, but I've been visiting it since 2007. That was my first time there on the holidays. And it made a big impression on me, but it's interesting. It was interesting to see how it changed over the years. I'm just reading your questions. Yeah, so about drafting soldiers is a question of will Russia, eventually, if they want to keep this up, they're going to have to think about mass mobilization, and that's a big problem for Putin, because you got to understand that Putin, what he has is basically passive support, right? Like a lot of people there, they are not going to put their own lives on the line for this idiot. And all these guys you see taking part in these Z rallies and stuff like that, when the draft notices start coming in, they're going to disappear. The Z's are going to just disappear, and that's when you're going to find a lot of Russians are suddenly diehard pacifists, right? And hang on a sec to get out of it. Why did they throw the smoke there? Oh, well, a lot of the times when I was in Kiev, I was visiting. So, I was actually working, most of the time I was a teacher. There were times when I was forced to go there just to get a Russian visa, because a lot of times, with most Russian visas, you need to go outside of the country, and you have to go to a Russian consulate. So there were like about 3 or 4 times in 1 year where I had to go to Kiev to get these visas, and there's a way to do it. There's a way to do it so you can get it like in 1 day. would show up in the morning by train. You drop off your documents. Drop off your documents. You drop off your documents with this visa agency, and then you get it in the afternoon, and you go back on a train in the evening. So theoretically, it's possible to do it in one day. Why is it possible? Because of corruption, basically. Because the Russian rule is like you have to go to a consulate, or to get the expedited visa, you need to get the visa from a consulate in a country that you have residency in. Now, obviously, if you're American, you don't want to go back to like DC. So what happens is you pay a visa agency a bunch of money, and they say, oh, this person actually has temporary residency in Ukraine, so we can expedite his visa. And that's basically what happens. So corruption sometimes is essential, and it was certainly essential that year. But other times, when I visited Kyiv for work, it was when I became a journalist. And I basically was, most of the time I was working in Donbass, and either that, or I remember one time I was just visiting for the hell of it. So, and then of course when I was living there was that time when I was trying to enlist in the armed forces, and that was an extended period of time because there's a lot of bureaucracy. See, the recruitment culture is very different. Resupply. Okay, there we go. The recruitment culture is very different in the Ukrainian military. I mean, it's probably improved by now, but in the U.S. military, especially like when I joined back in I joined in 2000, but this was basically the end of the 90s, right? And things, recruiters were very aggressive. You walk in that office and they didn't want you to leave without like taking the ASVAB or some shit like that. Holy shit! What are you doing here? Why are you here? Jesus. Okay, sorry about that. We got stragglers there. Yeah, so I'm used to this American Army recruitment culture where, Army recruitment culture where basically they're super aggressive. And, it's just not that way with contract service in Ukraine, or at least it wasn't at the time. You think it would be, but, in 2017, apart from the early part of the year, I'm talking like January, February, when it was kind of hot, things sort of, I want to say things kind of, I won't say they got peaceful, but they kind of calmed down along the front line. A lot of rounds for one person. Let me see, I'm trying to read your question. I'm also trying to defend my sector here. Yeah, I mean, the thing about joining NATO and everything is the problem is it's useless, because here's the thing. Ukraine was officially a non-bloc country, and they got attacked by Russia, right? And so here's the thing. Here's the thing. After 2014, the new government, after Yanukovych, said, we are not seeking NATO membership. Russia didn't care. Okay, so here's the thing. They could say, you want us to declare we won't be in NATO? Fine, we won't be in NATO. Does that mean you're going to get off our land? Are you going to get out of Donbass? No, they won't do any of that. They will continue to occupy, and they will continue to try to influence Ukrainian politics and get their influence over the rest of the country, because of everything that Putin said in his 7,000 word article and the speech before he launched this latest invasion, which is that he believes that Ukraine is not a real country and it belongs to Russia. So, Zelensky saying, okay, we won't be in NATO, it's irrelevant, right? Well, I would say that, in Eastern Europe, that's true, about not having neutral countries. I think ultimately a Ukrainian victory is inevitable. I think if they compromise, the only defeat they can have is a compromise that gives the Russians too much territory, or just, it's not basically punitive, right? Like, here's the thing. In 2015, they imposed Minsk on Ukraine, right? And because of the way the Minsk agreement was structured, it basically allowed Russia to, in bad faith, exert, their influence and basically sort of like create a stalemate, right? Now, Ukraine is in a situation where they are damaging Russia. They can cause huge damage to Russia, to its army at least. And at this point, it's like now it's Russia's turn to have to sign the humiliating peace agreement, right? And it needs to be humiliating. They have to make... Oh, fuck. Okay, I'm going to have to clean this out. Okay, it's all down to me now. Let's throw on the point. Where are they? Fuck. Speed reload. Oh, what is this smoke? Ah, there we go. Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, the thing is, the thing about Russia is that, yeah, I like the Steven Seagal Zelensky fist fight. Yeah. Yeah. So the thing is, thanks. I was a little bit worried about that. I had to get back on the point. Yeah. So the thing is that because Russia, in Russia's definition, a Ukrainian nationalist, and they're not using that term in the traditional sense. It's like you are a So see, Russia supports self-proclaimed nationalists in other countries, right? For we know about France, Alternative for Deutschland, all that stuff. We know, yeah, that was actually a pretty good round. Excuse me. So yeah, I'm looking at a lot of questions there. So yeah, when they say Ukrainian nationalists, they mean it in a pathological sense that they don't say when it comes to their allies, like say Serbia, right? Like Russia is a main backer of Serbian nationalism. Yes, like Joseph says, like let's get our nice little helmet. Okay, I like to be an observer. So what it means, like a Ukrainian nationalist, is anybody who doesn't want Russia to control Ukraine, and it's that simple. And for a long time, there were many Ukrainians, I mean, even up to this war, there were many Ukrainians who kind of acted like that wasn't the case, and they thought, well, if we just won't be so nationalist, then maybe it'll help the situation. But as you can see, it just really doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you do, as long as you don't believe Russia should control the country and shouldn't be occupying part of its land, then you are a nationalist. And that's why, like, the thing about Bandera, I'll tell you the funniest thing about Bandera is that in Ukraine, they've done polls on this. In Ukraine, there really isn't a majority of people who are like fans of Bandera. There's been surveys, and they show that even after decommunization and everything, like the percentage of people who see Bandera merely in a positive light only went up by about like 1%, right? After this is several years after. There. This is like several years after decommunization, when they're renaming streets and everything. So nobody really cares. Here's the issue, though. Russia, going back to the Soviet Union, calls anybody who wants to speak Ukrainian or anything like that, they call them Banderites, right? They use that label, Banderites, for everybody. And they basically made Bandera into this symbol of Ukrainian identity, regardless of what you actually think about the man or his movement or anything like that, right? So that's why, it's just the absurdity of Russia using these labels and saying, oh, they rehabilitate Bandera. No, you turned everybody who wants to be Ukrainian or speak Ukrainian in Ukraine, you labeled them Banderites. Right? So, I mean, they literally did this, and there are plenty of people in Ukraine, older people especially who lived in the Soviet Union, they can confirm this. Like, they can confirm that, yes, I spoke Ukrainian once when I was visiting Moscow or something, and someone called me a Banderite, and this is like 1970s or something, you know. So that's where a lot of this stuff comes from. Yeah, most people, just like many, Americans don't know a lot of the horrible shit that our presidents did. Most people don't really know much about Bandera. They just think, oh, he was locked up in a German concentration camp, so he couldn't have possibly been, such a collaborator. And that's not accurate. I mean, yes, he was a collaborator. In fact, when he was put into the camp, he lived in a special, like a special annex of the camp, which was for what the Germans called like prisoners of honor or something like that. And these were basically mostly fascists from Europe who, they were fascists like Oria Sima from Romania. He was part of the Iron Guard. And Kurt Schuschnigg, who was former, I want to say, prime minister of the Austro-fascist government. So Bandera himself, at least, was not, he didn't live anything like a normal prisoner in these camps. However, it is true that, yes, the Germans did, got killed there. Now I can speak more intelligently on this, so I don't have to split my attention. But yes, it is true that he was arrested by the Germans. It's true that his wing of the OUN, and actually later the other wing of the OUN, was basically made a legal organization by the German occupation. Yes, they would execute these people on the spot. It is true that, yes, the Ukrainian insurgent army did fight some battles against the Nazi occupiers. What's also true, and this is an interesting fact, and it's something that I'd like to dig into more probably when all this is over, but what is also very true is that the UPA actually did collaborate on a limited basis with Soviet partisans. Let me repeat that, with Soviet partisans. In 1942, they sort of made they kind of had like a non-aggression pact, and they were in negotiations to work together, and those fell apart because, of course, the Soviet side insisted on full Soviet control, right? But there was actually collaboration between these two groups, and of course there were people who deserted from the UPA to the Soviet partisans. There were people who were actual Nazi collaborators, like auxiliary police, who were recruited by the Soviet partisans. So this is why it's so hard when we talk about whitewashing figures in Ukrainian history, and we say, well, these figures, let's say the Soviet partisans, the Sidor Kovpak's partisans, whatever, we say, well, these aren't this controversial because they, even though they fought for the Soviet Union, they also fought the Nazis, right? But the thing is that they also recruited people who were former collaborators, and it's not like they investigated to see what these people did. They didn't run a background check. They just knew this guy was in the police and he deserted to us with a weapon, and they recruited him. And so the thing about that war is that on that side, you don't find a lot of people who were absolutely clean. If you look at the Soviet Union itself, they were actually basically fueling the German war machine, literally, with oil and other raw materials and also grain. And they would not have been able to launch Operation Barbarossa without those resources. When we talk about memory wars and history wars in Ukraine, there are a lot of things that I am not happy with. I was really glad when Volodymyr Vyacherovich was no longer head of the Ukrainian Institute of National Memory. The guy they replaced him with, I think, was a lot better. But, like I said, in order to truthfully pick apart what happened, you're going to find that, it's not easy. And countries, we are going through the same kind of controversy in the U.S., and we've been independent since the 18th century, right? So, and we're still debating over some of the same shit. I mean, let's take the thing over Confederate statues, right? I mean, I remember these debates going on in the mid-90s, right? And they were just like, none of this was resolved. Are we defending? Okay, we're defending. my situational awareness is very bad. Oh, thank you for the correction about Kurt Schussnig. I'm glad somebody recognized him. Yeah, so he was the chancellor. Do you know Engelbert Dollfuss? Was he was also chancellor before he got assassinated? That's a history deep cut there when you mention Engelbert Dollfuss. Like, if you want to get into the commander called in a strafe on us, didn't he? We just got killed by an A-10. Folks, this is a very realistic game, okay, because we are friendly troops that just got killed by an A-10 Warthog, and the A-10 Warthog has like the highest record of friendly fire incidents and civilian collateral damage. So very accurate. Oh, hey, thanks, Jesus. Thanks for bestowing the donation. Yeah, but I was going to say, if you want to talk about weird alternate history, it's like, what if Engelbert Dollfuss doesn't die, and then like the Nazis don't get Austria, but Austria is still a fascist country, but then maybe they go to war with Italy over South Tyrol. Like, there's a lot of potential there for some story. Yeah. Yeah, it's weird how that works out. My favorite story about the Austro-fascist regime, though, is Ludwig von Mises, who, of course, is the darling of the ANCAPs and many libertarians. He was a economic advisor to the Austro-fascist government. Okay, I hope this time it's not going to hit us. Where is it? Watch for the smoke. I don't see the smoke, so I'm staying back because I don't trust my commander. But yeah, back to Ludwig von Mises. Ludwig von Mises, again, this is the big libertarian thinker. He worked for an authoritarian fascist government, right? And he famously defended fascism by saying that, like every libertarian always said, they always imagine, in the case of Austria, it's like, yes, there was a communist movement there at the time, but libertarians had this tendency of just imagining a communist revolution that's going to break out, and that excuses going against all their libertarian principles and endorsing fascism, like Pinochet, for example, right? And it's amazing how people don't catch on. My gunship. I gotta get out of here. These guys are not defending. We're supposed to defend this objective, and these guys are all over the place. And that's bad because if they come in that door and I can't see shit. Damn, I need to resupply too. Is there any ammo around here? Okay, I'm just gonna keep them out. Thermite grenade. Yeah, exactly. Like I used to have about the libertarians there. Like we used to have this joke that like they start off as libertarians and they're like, hey, I'm against the state. I'm an ANCAP. I don't want states or whatever. And then someone tells them women don't want to date them, and then suddenly they become this like traditionalist fascist because no one will date them. Okay, looks like I'm the only guy guarding the objective here. Yeah, I mean it's so predictable, the libertarian to fascist pipeline. Also, I think what radicalizes a lot of them, they get really upset that the government, like the federal government in the United States and state governments, they enforce age of consent laws, and as you know, ANCAPs hate those. So that's like the purest definition of tyranny to them. So that's why they get so upset about that. Are you coming over here, suicide bomber? Oh. Ah. Yeah, see, the Apache doesn't kill its own troops. The gold standard thing, though, about libertarians is that, for a long time, they're all about the gold standard. Like, only gold is real money, right? And what's interesting, though, is how many of those gold bugs have enthusiastically embraced cryptocurrency. And I often find that very funny because a lot of their argument, like the main argument of for gold, is that, you know, it doesn't corrode, it is a commodity, right? It's a physical commodity, and theoretically, I mean, they act like it's inherently valuable, and it's like, no, we as a society give it its value, right? But at the same time, like, yes, gold is at least physical, right? And gold does have useful physical properties. And so when they said gold is the only real money, well, that's not quite right, but you could understand where their misinformed argument is coming from, right? But then when they embrace crypto, that's really funny. Because here's the thing, is crypto is nothing, right? Like, if a lot of these people, they believe in some kind of societal collapse is going to happen at some point, right? And the dollar is going to become worthless. Do you think that the internet infrastructure is going to be working in working order that you could readily use your crypto? Probably not, especially if you're one of these preppers and you're going to be living out in the woods and living in the, what do you call it? I don't know, the Appalachia or whatever. I don't think your crypto is going to do well when you're trying to like trade and barter with, you know, small towns or something. I mean, gold probably wouldn't be accepted either, but at least gold is a physical thing. You can take your gold coins and, you know, give them to people if they actually wanted them. Yeah, Peter Thiel's one to watch, by the way. That guy finances a lot of far-right causes, and I think, I mean, there are people investigating this, but I think, you know, in a few years we're going to find out that he is behind a lot of things, and I would not be surprised if he's behind some of these very unusual leftist characters. I use leftists in quotes when I say that. These leftists that pop up and have strangely reactionary views and want to sort of, you know, make common cause with MAGA people. Because nowadays, I mean, you get the situation where some guy that looks like a Instagram influencer just pops out of nowhere and suddenly he's a Marxist and he's a communist and doesn't seem to know the most basic stuff about, you know, Marxist theory. And I think that's kind of suspicious, isn't it? You know, you get a guy who pops up, some of these guys are calling themselves American Patriotic Communists now. And it's like, this is some kind of game, you know. This is something that's I didn't want to use this. I don't like this cosmetic. Can't change it now. Yes, I mean, yeah, definitely Hinkle and that whole circle.
Are we going?
Do you think, here's the thing about Charles Bausman. He definitely has money. He sold a home. I think he sold an apartment in Moscow. I know people who have been tracking Bausman for a while. But one thing is, I know that he's been kind of unsuccessful at getting like proper state backing, or we don't think he actually got the backing he wanted from Konstantin Malafiev. Yeah, Charlie, we're talking about astroturfing big time here. Bausman, I know people who knew him like when he had first moved to Russia and before Russia Insider and everything, before he like came out as an open, outright Nazi. And what these people tell me is that he was basically typical American expats in Russia who's just got like a million different business like every week he's got a different business venture that basically is a scam of some kind, or not necessarily a scam. It just doesn't work out. You know what I mean? Because he doesn't know what he's doing, and just one of these sort of failed entrepreneur types. And then he got into Russia Insider, and oh, we got a target over there. Let's use a little overkill. Probably missed him.
Yeah, we're coming.
There's no one moving up. Oh, I hope they're not doing this on the objective. Okay, I'll get to more of your questions. I just want to clear the objective real quick. Still stalemate. Oh, you're not dead. Okay. All right. Yes, I do like the folding ideas thing on crypto is great. By the way, check out check out, I want to say, Robert Evans, Behind the Bastards. Check out his episode about cryptocurrency, because that's very informative as well. Like, it's like two parts. The first part is about crypto in general, and then he gets into NFTs. Very informative. But yeah, folding ideas thing was very good. It's just in a few parts he got a little bit too technical for me. I know the guy has some tech background or something like that, and I'm at a point now where like I pretty much understand everything about Bitcoin except how to like actually acquire and use it. Although I'm at a point where I could figure that out pretty quickly. Let's see if I'm just trying to see if we cleared this. We got some uninvited guests. But yeah, crypto, my God, I get so sick of even just hearing about it. And, you know, like I don't own a TV, and so I don't see a lot of advertisements. Most advertisements I see, it's when I go to the movies. And I remember going, it was like last year, I was seeing the Kingsman, and they had the, they had the, that crypto.com, I think, ad, you know, the one with Matt Damon, right? And I love the ad is just so ridiculous because it shows you famous explorers, right? Like Christopher Columbus. He's talking about Christopher Columbus and Magellan or Leif Erikson, like all these famous explorers, and Matt Damon is talking to you about how these were people who took risks, and people who you know, they put everything on the line, and then basically it's saying that, you know, if you get into crypto, like you could be like one of these explorers, you could be like Neil Armstrong walking on the moon. And there's even a part at the end of it that shows a bunch of people like getting in a space rocket and they're going to go to Mars, right? Because that's where you want to, you know, that's where you want to get the Elon Musk rats, right? Because those guys all love crypto, and they're total suckers, like they're, you know, extremely gullible suckers. And so, yeah, at the end of it, like he says that, you know, that quote from Virgil, "Fortune favors the bold." And the whole thing is just hilarious because it's like if you're trying to get someone to invest in something, if you ever watch like those old ads for investment firms like Charles Schwab and stuff like that, it's all about smart investing. It's about your money being secure with us, right? It's all about, you know, being savvy and understanding the market and making calculated risks. And, you know, that's the thing with real investments, like that's what it's about, right? You want your money to be secure. You want to know that you're, you know, you want to make profit and you want to take risk, but you also want to make informed decisions, right? And, you know, that's the general tenor of a lot of those investment firm commercials, at least the ones I remember back when I watched TV. But, you know, nowadays, with the crypto ad, Matt Damon's crypto ad, it's like, what the hell was that? It's a gunship again, okay. Yeah, with the crypto ad, it's like, you know, you need to be bold, and you need to forget about people telling you not to take unnecessary risk, or you know, don't listen to the haters who will tell you about scams. You know, that it's just, it's hilarious to me because it's like if this was something sound, if this was a sound investment, then you wouldn't be using that angle. You know what I mean? You wouldn't phrase things that way. It's just like highly suspicious. You know what I mean? And if you watch that Folding Ideas video, and also with the Behind the Bastards, they compare it to a pyramid scheme, and that's what crypto basically is. It is a pyramid scheme, and you got a lot of people, like, well, you got like several different types of people, right? You got the scammers, and they know what's up, right? So they're going to lie to you about everything. And then what you have after the scammers, then you have the, hang on a sec, is this helicopter still firing at us? I don't think so. Okay, so after the scammers, you have the people who are scammed, right? And then you have the people who got scammed and have kind of figured out they've gotten scammed, and now they realize that they have an incentive to scam someone else to unload their, you know, they're going to unload their crypto at a loss, obviously. But I mean, this is a common thing where, you know, someone's scammed, they gotta try to cut their losses and get something back for their poor investment, right? So what they need is, it's called like the greater fool theory, right? So because if you have crypto and you're going to make a profit off crypto, the only way you really do that is you need to somehow get someone else to pay a higher price for it than you did, right? So you need to convince somebody to do that. And that's, you know, that's not really a smart move. So you're going to basically have to find a sucker, or you're going to have to make someone a sucker. And for the latter, you know, you go and you basically need to go out there and just proselytize, right? You have to go and boost crypto and talk about how great this is until someone buys it. Yeah, if you want to learn more about how much the A10 sucks, again, Laserpig, I've had people other than him, like, you know, other knowledgeable people mention this problem with the A10, but these people didn't make a huge two-part video explaining it in great detail, and it's definitely worth watching. And as he points out, it's not that the A10 can't be used effectively. It's just that the weapons that it can carry in order to use it effectively and, like, you know, not blow up your own people, those weapons, these missiles and bombs and stuff like this, they can be carried by any number of other aircraft that are better in other areas, right? So what happens is the A-10 just kind of becomes redundant. It has no real purpose, because this idea of the Burt gun, you know, wiping out all these tanks and stuff like that, that just doesn't happen. Those are rockets, and who is shooting? I think he called down rockets on that position. I usually go up on the roof here, but that's like danger close. Trying to catch up on everything here because I'm stuck here until our rocket barrage ends. Yeah, it's great that Turkey keeps giving him those drones. But like I said last night, what I really want to see is I want him to get the Akinji, because I know they've at least built a few of those. The Akinji is the has higher altitude. It can launch air launch cruise missiles. We got more people coming up here. Oh, guard that. Who the hell did that? Oh, okay, he's already there. Oh, look at this. Okay, so what are these guys going to do when they kill the other guy on the point there? Yeah, see, now they're coming in there. Why would you defend like this? That also explains why he called in a rocket barrage on us. The community lacking videos about submarines. Which community exactly? And when it comes to submarines, I'm more of a fan of like the World War II submarines. I remember reading, I used to play Silent Hunter 4, and I read that book, what was it? Wahoo by Dick O'Kane. I think he wrote it before he died. I don't remember, that was a long time ago though. I think Ukrainians have been giving out some leaflets, by the way, to... I think they have been giving out some leaflets in some towns to Russian soldiers, and possibly it's been working. I read an interesting story the other day. It's about a American volunteer who went there, and he's going back. And a lot of people were ragging on this guy because he did have Army experience, but he was a tanker, or on a tank crew. And basically he went there, I guess, he didn't really have that infantry experience, and his last mission was they had to go and recover the body of a fallen comrade. It was a Georgian fighter, and they had to drag this body back to back to the headquarters. And people were giving this guy a lot of shit, but it's like, well, he did it. He did go with them and do that rather grisly mission, and but then he decided, he knew his limits, and he decided he wouldn't really be much more help there. And again, this is a guy who doesn't really have any background in Ukraine and doesn't know the language. So I don't really, I think people were unnecessarily harsh on the guy. Because he wasn't an Instagram warrior. He didn't show up and then immediately leave because of that cruise missile attack. He actually witnessed that and, stayed anyway. So, good try, right? And he didn't get anyone killed. So, anyway, I was reading the story, and he mentioned at some point, he said, we were going to find the body, and on the way, he said, they passed a group of guys that he thought were Russian soldiers, and hopefully there was a Ukrainian with him who also probably said, yeah, those are Russian soldiers. But he said that basically the Russian soldiers didn't point guns at them, or maybe they were unarmed, and they just walked by and they shouted, Slava Ukraini. And so, there's been this case of Russian soldiers running out of food and stuff, and some of them are robbing places and looting shops, but some have apparently, in some cases, they have gone to villages and just asked politely for food, and they've gotten it too. And so the Ukrainian people have been treating these Russians invading their country very fairly, very humanely as well. I've seen videos where you've all seen videos where they're letting people call their mother or call their family or whatever. There's one I saw where basically they're holding the phone so the guy can talk to his wife or mother, and at the same time, they're giving him hot tea and they're giving him some kind of food at the same time, piroshki. So yeah, I mean, it's not the reverse is not true. Russia, the hatred that they, I want to say the hatred they spread of Ukraine, and with that humiliation culture, no Ukrainian would expect that treatment from the Russian side. So yeah, I'm just reading there, and I'm falling behind my guys here. That's good sometimes though, because sometimes these stragglers will come in from behind. All right, get a sip of my tea here, chamomile. Yeah, the thing about filming POWs, okay, so the main thing is you're not supposed to humiliate them or use them in, propaganda or whatever. And it's putting them on camera is technically a violation of the Geneva Convention, but let's be honest, not all violations of the Geneva, I mean, if you really read the rules and everything, they are quite, they are quite detailed, okay? And you can't pretend all potential violations are the same, because they're not, okay? Showing a Russian, and I'll tell you this, okay, one reason why they're doing this, and where the Geneva Convention is a little out of date, is that the Geneva Convention tends to assume that there's at least a declaration of war, or at least both sides are admitting their involvement in the war. And of course, in Russia's case, they are concealing all sorts of details about this war, and a lot of these soldiers' families have not been told what their relatives are really doing. And so, by just capturing them and keeping them prisoner and not showing proof of life with videos and not letting them, call home like that, that would be more cruel than just simply making videos of them doing that. So, you have to, you have to weigh, and you have to where is this person? Okay. Yeah, so to pretend that like all violations are equal in this case, like it's kind of ridiculous. No one's.
Okay.
Yeah, like no one is mistreating them or something like that, and I think it's really a service to their families because a lot of these guys were told that they were going on exercises, and that's what they told their families back home. Don't worry, I'm just going here because they say we're doing exercises, right? And like I said, for many of these people's relatives, these videos are proof of life. It's proof that their kid did not just disappear. Shoot at me, will you? Oh, someone got him. Okay. What the? Ow. How did I miss that guy? His camouflage is very good. Well, Kuwait actually lost, to be fair, pretty quickly. I mean, until the intervention, right? Wait, there was a general who got wounded in hand-to-hand combat? I mean, that's almost worse. I mean, losing 7 generals that's a higher score, I would say. Let's see. Yeah, here's the thing about conscripts in Russia. With conscripts in Russia, most young men try to buy their way out of it. What they do is they basically buy a slip that says you're medically unfit, right? Now, that can be a problem for some people. Like, let's say you want to be a commercial pilot in Russia. What they do is they check your military service, and if you have like a slip that says I was medically unfit, then they say, oh, well, you're medically unfit to be a pilot then, so you can't be a commercial airline pilot. Now, with most people, though, they don't really care about that, so what most young men do is they go and they buy their way out of it. They bribe the medical board. And it's not the sort of thing where you have to be rich to do that. Most middle class, and I'd say like mostly a Russian middle class families, if they'd save up money for it, but it's possible for them to do it without too much trouble. Obviously with the rich, like there's no chance of them having to worry about doing military service. Oftentimes they study abroad. But there is, in Russia, as I understand, as it was explained to me a long time ago, if you are a male between 18 and 27, that's when you're eligible to be drafted, right? And you can get out of that without bribery if you go to university, like you study a technical field or something like that, and then within a certain amount of time after graduating university, you get a job in that field that you studied for, like if you're an engineer or something like that. And if you do that, and you're able to do that job until you're 27 years old, then, as I understand, then you'll basically be exempt from military service. So there's a few ways out of it. Now, where poverty becomes a factor is like with, for example, signing contracts, right? Because the thing is that in Russia, in terms of like social mobility, you have some limited options, right? And one is like if you're from the regions, if you're like from Chelyabinsk or you're from Tatarstan, Bashkortostan, something like that, or Buryatia, for example, you can either leave and move to Moscow or St. Petersburg, and there you can get a better job, or at least you could in the past. Or your other option, if you're a male, would be contract service in the army, because contract service did improve a lot in the Russian army. They did get paid relatively well. In fact, one way they recruited so many people from the Ukrainian Navy in Crimea was, first of all, they straight up threatened them. But the other thing is that the Ukrainian naval officers were working sometimes hand to hand with Russian naval officers, and they were aware that the Russians were getting paid something like 5 times as much as they were. And so that kind of sweetened the deal for some of these guys. Also, a lot of these guys, because they're officers, they get free apartments in Crimea, right? And they were not sure if they would stay or if they would leave and go to government-controlled Ukraine. They were not entirely sure if the government would give their family a new apartment. And so, you know, this is several of the levers, the leverage, basically, that they had over these Ukrainian military officers, because they were paid much, much less back then, and Russia was actually paying a lot more. Let's see, what other questions we have. Dziedowщина, I'm told that Dziedowщina practices have improved significantly, but hazing is still a problem, and as we see, apparently a lot of corruption is still a problem there. There was a case, I want to say in 2019, where a Tatar conscript killed 8 Russian soldiers. I called it a battle in the Tatar War of Liberation, because his name was, I think it was Renat Shamsutdinov, and he had been threatened, and I think even threatened with rape by other soldiers. So he went and did the proper Chad thing. He got his weapon and took out like 8 of them, including one officer, I think. So yeah, the Russian military still is very much like prison. I mean, there's, you know, it's like prison with the violence, with the exploitation, and with the schemes and stuff that they do, and that helps explain the performance you see right now, right? But yeah, so that's the you know, the situation with Dziedowщina. One reason why they were able to actually have an impact on it is because the tradition of the Dziedowщina, the Dziedi, were guys who had already served their first year. This was back when conscription was for 2 years. So the guys who have served their first year beat up on the guys who have not completed their first year yet. And so that was like the distinction that allowed certain guys to bully other guys, right? And so what they did around, I want to say it was 2010, when they reduced the conscription term from 2 years to 1, it erased that distinction. So it helped a little bit with getting rid of that, you know, getting rid of that problem. But it has never really gone away. And again, it goes back to a lot of that gulag culture. Ooh, set off a smoke grenade there. That doesn't really help. Let's see. I want to answer something. I know that thread you're mentioning about the VDV being, you know, really intended to put down rebellion. The person who did that thread, they write some insightful stuff, but this is clearly not their area of expertise. The VDV, I mean, you know, obviously they're not as elite as people thought. The issue with the VDV is that they are all contract soldiers, and are supposed to be contract soldiers, and so they, you know, they are a bit better trained. But yeah, they're clearly very overrated. I mean, in general, like airborne these days, you know, airborne has this reputation for being elite, but that's kind of from World War II days, right? And when you really look at, you know, when you really look at the big picture, especially now in modern times, that airborne distinction really doesn't mean much. You know what I mean? Because, well, I mean, just look what happened to the VDV, right? Let's see what's happening next. If you're not an ethnic Russian, so I have some inside information on this. My late brother-in-law was not an ethnic Russian, and he served his conscript time in the Russian army. That's where I learned what a scam it is. But see, here's the thing about the hazing, right? A lot of the hazing in the Russian army is like Caucasian, typically Dagestani, you know, guys from Dagestan beating up on the Slavic Russian guys. In the case of my late brother-in-law, he was Muslim but not Caucasian, so he basically was just kind of left alone. Like the Caucasians were messing with the Russians, but with him it was like, well, okay, you're neutral basically, like, you know, close enough. So you can't. Basically, it's like you can't be part of our clique because you're not from Dagestan, but you know, we won't mess with you, right? And they never did. Of course, you know, he was a pretty tough guy. He did Greco-Roman wrestling and was pretty tall and quite a fighter, as I understand. So he would have been okay. VDV, yeah, the VDV has not been having a great month. We'll say that. They still exist. They still have troops, but they're just not doing too well. The story about them dropping into the sea in Odessa, I've never seen confirmation of that. I see it keeps getting brought up, but I haven't seen any evidence of that. Also, I know that probably only one IL-76 was actually downed. If anybody does have, if anyone does have a, you know, any kind of confirmation or evidence about that Odessa drop, by all means share it, because I'd love to know the real story behind that. The thing about the Hostomel airport, you know, the Hostomel airport, that raid and what a disaster it was, it kind of helps prove, it shows you the mentality behind this Russian attack, because I believe they really did think that when it all kicked off, the Ukrainians wouldn't fight, and the idea was take Hostomel airport and then start, you know, basically just start rolling for the capital, right? And obviously it didn't work out too well for them. And the thing is, like, it's an idiotic idea what they did. It only makes any sense in this one scenario where the Ukrainians don't fight, right? And so extremely risky, obviously, and well, they did it, and look what happened. Okay, sorry, gotta deal with some guys here. Yeah, Laserpig, definitely ask him, because I know he's got good sources. I can tell, you know, I can tell when someone is you know, is going to the right sources, and some of the information that he's been talking about tells me that, you know, he's got fairly good sources on that. I think I asked about it in the comments because his video was the first time I heard that mentioned, and you know, I'm on Twitter constantly monitoring stuff. I had not seen that, so that's why I'm just kind of confused about what happened there, because there's a lot of fears about Odessa and like amphibious landings and stuff, and those have proven to be unfounded. Odessa is likely going to be safe for the foreseeable future, just because the Russians failed to cut off Mykolaiv. They failed to take Mykolaiv, and that mayor, by the way, in Mykolaiv, really cool guy. He's been, you know, personally taking part in the oh shit. It's Apache. Gotta get inside. Okay, we'll resupply here. Where's the guy? Still good. Yeah, so the mayor there, Vitaly Kim, interesting guy. He is part Korean, and he's really taking charge of the defense. And well, you see what happened. I mean, they've taken tons of prisoners there. They've pushed the Russians back towards Kherson. Kherson is now contested, they say. I'm missing some of these comments, and I actually want to read them all. Thanks, Easy 8, for handling that. Yeah, the thing I'm most interested in is when this is all over. You know what I'm interested in is when the Putin regime falls, and the most important thing is basically the FSB and GRU, SVR, they need to be treated like the SS at the end of the Second World War, like basically criminal organizations, right? And what I want to see happen is all the archives open. All the Soviet archives that they closed, because, you know, they actually, you know, since Putin took power, they were actually closing a lot of archives that had been previously open. And of course, we want to see those reopened. But the other thing I want to see more than anything is the archives on everything from the Putin regime. MH17, I mean, we know what happened with MH17, but what I want to see is the Russians, I want the inside information on how the Russians ran their disinformation operation. What I really want to see in the archives is I want to see all the archives that archival material that deals with people they paid in the West. You know, these so-called independent journalists. Wow, even the IED didn't set off. Fuck it. Okay, what about the Molotov? Where is it? It's right there. It's literally right there. I hit it with like 2 RPGs. There it goes. Jeez, that was crazy. No, we'll work out a tribunal somehow, I want to say, about that question. But, yeah, getting back to the archives, what I want to see is, I want to see, basically, you know, all these people in other countries that they paid, all the shills and stuff like that. Get back. I ran out of stuff to use on that. I need to resupply. What if I shoot? What if we just shoot it? No, I guess that doesn't count. Okay. Oh shit! This dude's shooting at me the whole time there. Great situational awareness, dude. Okay, he shot that guy at least. Oh, no, I shot him. Okay. Well, you know, it's insurgency. It's messy. So over here real quick. Got to resupply. Yeah, so what I'm interested in is, I mean, we already have, there are nonprofit, you know, all nonprofits they have to make their taxes public, right? And there's a nonprofit in California, it's linked to the Syrian government, and their tax records are public, and they show that they gave about like $20,000 to Gray Zone. And, you know, big surprise there, right? But what I want to see, come out of there, I'm playing... Oh, now he comes out. Okay, yeah, great. No, still at the top there. But just looking at the. But yeah, it's going to be great when the all these archives, especially the archives, even the stuff related to like Russia Today and everything, when it shows all these people they're working with, and who they paid to do what, it's going to be really interesting. What the hell are these? What's going on here? I'm not. There's a conversation going on here in the game that I'm not privy to. They want to kick someone. I don't see the vote thing come up for me, though. I don't know how to vote kick in this game. Yeah, maybe shoot that guy? Okay, what's the plan? To wait here the whole time? But yeah, so here's the thing. I'm going to mute everybody. One more vote is required. How do I do that? Okay. I don't even know how to vote in this. Get on the point, idiot. Mehdi Hassan. No, I don't. You know, Mehdi can be good on some things at times, and then just horrible on other things. And he was actually. I remember the first time he was interviewing. Like this was around 2016. He was interviewing a Russian like Duma deputy or something. And it was really funny because, like, he said it was illegal when you invaded Ukraine or whatever, and she says, "Was it illegal when the U.S. invaded Iraq?" And he's like, "Yes, it was." Now, when you invaded Ukraine, and just he didn't miss a beat, you know. So, but like all TV hosts and commentators, like there's, you know, even the best of them can just do really cringy shit at times, and I think that's what we're seeing. And that's what we see with Mehdi. You know, some people are bad all the time. You know what I mean? Like they're just horrible. You know, like Bill Maher, right? Like that's the most annoying guy. There's a thing a lot of leftists talk about how Bill Maher is still seen as like this leftist guy for some reason, and you know, there's a lot of like conservatives who say stuff like, "Oh, you want to cancel this celebrity for being conservative? Would you like to see Bill Maher canceled?" And like most leftists are like, "Yes, do that," you know, or very sarcastically like, "Oh no, don't cancel our great philosopher and beloved TV host Bill Maher. We would be very sad if you did that," right? I mean, Bill Maher. Let me tell you how much Bill Maher sucks. And I'm talking. This isn't even about politics, okay? I'm talking about his quote unquote comedy here. All right, Bill Maher. Have you ever noticed? Like I noticed this back in like 2016, and it was already old by then. Bill Maher loves making jokes about like Michelle Bachmann and Sarah Palin, like years after these people have been out of the news for a long time. Like he loves Sarah Palin jokes, even though Sarah Palin stopped being funny by about, I don't know, 2012 at the latest, right? Maybe 2010. Like Palin was all over the news, you know, when she was running with John McCain. But like after that, it's like who gives a shit? You know what I mean? Like all the comedy that could be squeezed out of Sarah Palin's stupid comments and stuff. We were done with that by 2010. But you know, Bill Maher, he's like the kid looking at the anime guy looking at the butterfly. Like, is this a comedy goldmine? And apparently he decided that yes, it is. And but that's not even the worst part, right? I was watching, somebody posted like Bill Maher cringe. Haha. Okay. Somebody was posting some Bill Maher cringe, and this was from last year, 2021, okay? And he made a joke about a Bushism. Like he, you know, he was talking about something, he was doing his new rule thing or something. Get out of the way. He's closer and he's not shooting at these guys. Got him. Okay, so I got all three of those guys. Yeah, so he's doing his little routine, and he says, rarely is it asked, is our children learning? And then he smirks at the camera, and the audience like laughs and claps. And if you're not familiar with that quote, that is a so-called Bushism. One of George W. Bush's many flubbed lines, basically. And I was like, well, that is probably, that's from the early 2000s. But then I looked it up, and it turns out that George W. Bush said that on the campaign trail in 2000. Okay, that means in Bill Maher's in 2021 making a Bushism joke that is over 20 years old, basically 21 years old, right? Because it's 2000. Imagine that, being a so-called professional comedian, and that's your routine. I mean, it's like if you were to catch up with like Jay Leno, or Jay Leno's going to tell some jokes, and just let people walk in the door. Good job, guy. Jesus. See. Sorry, but back to Jay Leno. So if Jay Leno came back into a comedy routine and all his jokes are about OJ, the OJ trial. Like, I mean, if he made like, Jay Leno hasn't been on the air much, at least not doing comedy, and I'm sure if he came back, I mean, yeah, I would, for nostalgia's sake, I would allow him one OJ joke just because that was like his whole career, and it really got old, but that's what he does, right? But if he was to, if Jay Leno was to start touring or have a new show and he was doing like OJ trial jokes, it's like, dude, come on. I mean, like, nostalgia only goes so far, but Bill Maher thinks nothing of telling a 21-year-old joke. And I'm guessing the only reason the audience really laughed is because they didn't want him to feel bad. And we're definitely going to lose this. I have no faith in this guy. Let me see the level of the players here. Oh wow, we actually lived. Okay. Yeah, Maher is another funny thing about Maher. Maher was an anti-vaxxer before the anti-vaxxer shit became mainstream. Like, I'm talking, years ago, like almost a decade ago, when you had the mommy bloggers starting this whole vaccine autism crap, right? Bill Maher was actually supportive of that shit. And, he was saying like, oh, do you trust Big Pharma, right? And, this was a time when anti-vax stuff was rightfully treated like a fringe thing. It was treated like, one of the dumbest things you could believe in. It was like almost flat earth, right? Of course, fast forward to now where you do actually have a sizable flat earther community. And of course, like, I hate to say it, but anti-vax shit is mainstream now. I mean, when you have about at least half the country that doesn't understand how vaccines work, and who are afraid of them, then yeah, it is. You could call it a mainstream thing. But Bill Maher, being the innovator and pioneer that he is, he was promoting pseudoscience much earlier, before we even had this pandemic. So, big applause for Bill Maher. But yeah, I mean, Jon Stewart became terrible, but Bill Maher was pretty much always terrible. The funny thing is, when he did get canceled, it was conservatives that canceled him because he, and what he said, like, all he said was, there were people calling the 9/11 hijackers cowardly, and he just said, like, look, like, we can call them a lot of things, but don't say they're cowards. I mean, you're deliberately killing yourself for some ideal. Like, you could be stupid, you are immoral, and you're a piece of shit, but you're not you can't really be called a coward. You know what I mean? And that's exactly what Bill Maher was saying, and he got totally canceled for that. But this was the post 9/11 era when cancel culture was good, at least according to some of the same people who decry cancel culture now. But they were fine with it back in the Bush years. Oh shit! Don't want to get killed by our own chemical weapons there. Yeah, Joseph, I agree with the whole comedy news thing. Like, the problem is, there was this thing when in the Bush years when people started saying, "Oh, I watch Jon Stewart because he's better than the real news," and it's like, yeah. One thing I did like about The Daily Show was their critique of cable news, because cable news is cancer. But the problem is that comedy news is, just because they will sometimes say things that other media outlets won't say, and sometimes those can be, those can be truthful things. The problem is that they are still entertainment. You know what I mean? And that's why I think probably the best among them is John Oliver, because John Oliver does try to actually inform you. He does, seem to do a lot more research. But of course, there's certain people that will hate him because, well, he's mainstream. So anything your parents like is cringe, right? So. Okay, I need to get my gas mask off here. But yeah, I mean, you know, like cable news is bad, comedy news or news entertainment, just because it's funny doesn't necessarily make it better. I also think that in the case of Jon Stewart, I think Jon Stewart kind of stunted a lot of liberals and leftists' ability to, how I say, not debate, but like how to deal with their opponents, right? What the hell are you doing? Huh. Yeah, I guess I killed myself because my team killed too many people, so damage reflects on me. But see, so it's the thing about Jon Stewart, right? Is like he kind of popularized that sort of Aaron Sorkin style dressing down of conservatives, right? Like, you know, where he'd kind of lean into the camera and they say, okay, well, listen here, Senator. And, you know, after letting like some Republican, showing a clip of some Republican talking about something, he would be like, okay, well, let's get serious about this, right? And he leans into the camera and he's like, all right, now you said this and this and this, right? But 2 years ago, you actually said this. But, you know, what did you mean here? Does this mean, you know, it's just kind of like, you know, like I said, like Aaron Sorkin, legal drama, sort of, you know, dressing down and just this long rant. And like liberals got addicted to this. And they mistake this as like the best way to these, you know, that sort of verbal evisceration of these conservative pundits or whatever. And the problem is it doesn't really work. It doesn't actually work in the discourse, right? Because when you don't care about credibility and you just make shit up and change your position every few minutes, then you know, getting dressed down like that or having someone like spout a bunch of facts at you doesn't do anything. You know what I mean? It doesn't stop them. I mean, a good example is, you know, we beat up on Aaron Sorkin a lot, justifiably, but I'm sure everyone here is familiar with the Aaron Sorkin series Newsroom, or at the very least, you're familiar with that clip that went really viral on YouTube. You know, this one where like Jeff Bridges, our hero journalist, is at some kind of college campus speaking engagement, and there's like I think it's like a Republican politician, and there's a Democrat politician on the panel that he's on, and then there's him, right? And it's Jeff Bridges, hero of the newsroom, right? And he's sitting there, and a girl stands up and asks the question, why is America the greatest country in the world? And you know, and this is, by the way, like these are college students, right? And this girl, the actress is like in her 20s, and I mean, just the idea of an adult asking this question in a university is just hilarious. But anyway, you know, what happens is the Republican guy gives his answer. He's like, well, yeah, freedom, right? And the Democrat lady gives her answer. And then it comes to Jeff Bridges, the gritty, grizzled, burnt-out journalist, to give his answer to the question. And he says, the truth is, America's not the greatest country. And first he has to insult the woman too, like, you know, he has to put her in her place, this female college student, right? And so he does that, and then he goes off on this rant. And yeah, sorry, I was looking away from the screen there, and someone nailed it. It was the you know, why America isn't the greatest country rant, right? And he starts rattling off all these statistics, and as I understand, some of them are actually not correct, but the point is he's rattling off all these statistics, and this gets confused with like intelligence. You know, and the idea is like, well, if I just you know, if someone can just rattle off arguments like this, then surely, you know, they would defeat their opponents in a debate or whatever. And in real life, like, that doesn't happen, right? Like, you could rattle off all that stuff, and your average conservative is just going to be like, well, you're a communist who hates America. I mean, you know, you're like, your statistics aren't going to do shit, right? I'm giving people flashbacks about this. I'm really sorry. Okay, how many people do we have on the point? They're just letting these people come in the side of the. Hey, I'm going to talk to my team. Hey, can we get some more people on the point? Like, this is Insurgency Sandstorm. It's not Call of Duty. Thanks. I know they're going to get pissed at me for saying that. But I mean, I'm right. I mean, look, they're letting an entire company just walk in here. Okay, he got killed, so now I don't have to. Someone's going to come in here, though, and they're going to get me. I feel guilty now as being kind of a dick. but I'm... See what happens? Yeah, but okay. You know what? Here's the thing. When we talk about Newsroom, the scene with the whole why America's not the best country thing, that is not even the worst scene. The worst scene. Look it up. Newsroom Bin Laden death. It's the most insane thing. It's the most insane thing ever. So these characters in the show, I don't know the name of any of the characters, but they're sitting on an airplane, right? And the airplane's on the tarmac, and it's not going, and it's like delayed, right? And everyone's like, "What's going on? Why are we sitting here so long?" And people are looking at their phones, trying to figure out what's going on. And then one of the characters, he finds the news. He gets the news that Bin Laden's been killed, right? And he doesn't say anything at first. What he does, he stands up, right? He stands up on the plane that was like taxiing earlier, and he says, "Can I have your attention?" And a stewardess comes up to him and says, "Sir, you need to sit down. We're going to be taking off any moment. You need to take your seat." And he's basically like, "Shut up, woman," because it's an Aaron Sorkin thing. Like, men have to keep putting women in their place in his shows. And he's like, just shut up, woman. I am speaking now. And what he does is he's basically arguing, and she's talking about getting him kicked off the plane or something. And then the pilot comes out, and the pilot, of course, is a man. So he's allowed. Now the main character is able to explain himself, because the captain outranks her and he's a man. And what happens, the funniest thing happens, right? Like, there's music, there's emotional music, and you see this character look at the pilot, right? And he suddenly looks like he's shocked, right? And he sees, it zooms in on the pilot's name tag and his shoulder board, the shoulder boards, the ranks on the epaulets of his shirt, right? And suddenly he's like, this is the pilot. Pilots were victims of 9/11 or something like that. And he goes, "Sir, it is my honor to inform you that in a U.S. Special Operations raid, Osama bin Laden has been killed." And then everybody on the plane is like, "Oh, yay!" And they clap. And it's it is the absolute dumbest thing you will ever see in a serious TV show. Hey guys, hey, come back here. Come back here. I'm a bad shot today. Okay. Did I use my RPG? I don't think I did. Okay, I just need to have that. But yeah, Newsroom, man. Look up Newsroom Bin Laden scene if you don't believe me. It is wild, because it's just, for me, it's the way he looks at the pilot. And he looks, like I said, the camera, at some point, the camera goes in tight on the guy's rank, right? It's like he's in the military or something. And that's what makes, because at first he's just hysterical. He's, when the woman, the stewardess is trying to get him to take a seat, he isn't having any of that. He's like, "How dare you try to give me, a man, a command on this airplane?" And he's not offering any explanation to her whatsoever as to why he is standing up, potentially delaying the departure, right? But once the captain shows up, he's like, "Oh, okay, now I have to give my important news, because I am a newsman." Yeah, that's the thing. You know, Bin Laden dies, and you suddenly get up on a plane when you shouldn't be getting up. That's when the sky marshals are going to get involved, usually, right? It's like you can applaud Bin Laden's death while sitting with your tray table up and your seat in the upright position, and your safety belt buckled. Yep, here comes another. Ah, fuck, someone else shoot him. Okay, he clipped through the door. You'll notice that I carry a Browning high power. I love that gun. I don't know why I love it. I haven't fired one like in 2 decades or something, but I don't know. I'm a fan, you know. I like the simplicity. Ah, shit. How are we doing? Whoa, 75 kills. Yeah, we're probably gonna lose this one too. Oh yeah, that's the thing. So this character I'm talking about in the newsroom, he's a white guy, so like he gets to do anything because it's Aaron Sorkin. I know people write about Aaron Sorkin, but here's my guilty pleasure. I was a big fan of the movie A Few Good Men because I like legal procedural stuff. I know it's usually all wrong, but I like when it's like, I know it's wrong, but it sounds realistic. You know what I mean? And I think as long as you know it's bullshit, it doesn't matter. But A Few Good Men has a lot of this, you know, stuff that sounds realistic, but you know it's total nonsense. Like the whole movie A Few Good Men is unnecessary because let's face it, if you look at the situation with Private Santiago and this guy wanted to transfer, actually, I mean, he could have been medically discharged, right? Like there was no reason not to do that. And so basically just because we need a movie and we need a plot, they basically have this irrational colonel who decides that, no, I really want to hang on to this private who can't even run anywhere without collapsing, right? And that was such an authentic impression that some of you may have thought that Jack Nicholson came into the room and did that line for me, but no, that was actually me, believe it or not. But anyway, so back to A Few Good Men. Like I said, guilty pleasure, but I enjoy that movie, and I remember when I moved to Russia, where I was living at the time, I didn't have internet in my apartment, and I rarely could get movies that had the proper audio in English, and I was able to get a copy of A Few Good Men. And I used to, you know, I'd be doing stuff on my computer, but I like to have some background noise at the time, and so I'd have that playing in the background. And I'd seen that movie enough times. I've seen that movie enough times to actually, I used to be able to recite, I could probably still recite, maybe not now, but I could recite Colonel Jessup's famous "You Can't Handle the Truth" speech on the stand. and it's weird because sometimes I'll recall that and it's like, yeah, I can pretty much get it down almost word for word. And one of these days maybe I'll do it on stream or something. Oh, someone was not watching the left. Okay, let me catch up on your questions there. I'm afraid to even attempt to watch Don't Look Up. I just won't do it. Look at the flight attendant thing. Yeah, I have another friend who monitors a bunch of cameras in Ukraine. I think he monitors like 9 at a time. It's great that there are just live cameras sitting around all over the world, isn't it? Yeah, so I never watched much of the Russian ripoff of Commando. I was watching it a little bit with my wife, and we stopped watching it because there was a like very creepy, cringy moment in the beginning. So you remember that? So in the plot, in the plot of Commando, Arnold, he has his, he lives with his daughter, right? And if you remember their conversation in the beginning, they're having typical like father teenage daughter conversations. Like he makes fun of Boy George because she likes Boy George. It's interesting. It's very progressive because he says something like, "Boy George, they should call him Girl George," and then like his daughter says something like, "Dad, that's old," and that's all she says. But it's just kind of, oh, I don't get credit for that? I set off an IED like right next to that. What the hell? Okay. I should have got credit for that. But yeah, so that's like the extent of the conversation between Arnold and his daughter. And so, sorry guys, distracted me there. So that's the conversation between Arnold and his daughter right now. In the beginning of this Russian ripoff, you got the main. I keep forgetting the actor's name, but here's the very important thing. Well, okay, I'll save this fact for later, right? So, what happens? There is a scene where, it's just like in the Arnold Commando. They're having this morning conversation at the cabin where he lives, and his daughter says something about, maturing, going through puberty, right? And she I don't remember the line she said, but like she kind of like loosens her shirt, like she looks down her own shirt, and I mean it's clear what she's referring to about growing up and everything, and both my wife and I were like, what the fuck? Why is this? Why are they having this conversation in this movie? And here's the really sick part about it. In that movie, in the Russian movie, that actress playing the character's daughter is the real daughter of the actor playing the protagonist. Okay, so not only did they make this like disturbing conversation that was not in the original Commando movie, but they also they put this in there when the daughter is the actor's real daughter, and I think he also was the producer for the film too. So yeah, like what the fuck, Russia, right? I mean, it's already bad enough you're just ripping off this movie. You asked about Chechen films. There is a film. It's a Russian film from the 90s, maybe early 2000s. It's called Prisoner of the Mountains, and it's set in the Chechen War. And while the protagonists it follows are Russian soldiers, but the Chechens are clearly portrayed as the moral side in this. I believe the story was sort of a modernization of one of Tolstoy's short stories, but I might be wrong about that. It's been a long time since I saw it. So yeah, it's called Prisoner of the Mountains, and it stars a famous Russian actor who died pretty young in a car accident. I want to say his name was Sergei Bodrov. I can't remember exactly. Yeah, I see someone reacted to that story about that conversation in that Commando ripoff. Oh yeah, that was weird. That was awkward as fuck. I have not seen Burnt by the Sun 2 because I didn't want to get brain damage. That is, I've seen reviews of it. I've seen clips of it. It is one of the dumbest things I've ever seen. I believe there is a scene in Burnt by the Sun 2 where the daughter character is on a boat on a river, and the boat gets sunk, and she doesn't have anything to cling to except there's like a naval mine. Oh shit! Helicopter. Fuck. Okay. Should have been, but yeah, there's she finds a floating naval mine in the middle of the river. Yeah, Bad Comedian has a review on it. So she's clinging to this mine, and she actually says, I shit you not, she has like a really soft voice, and she says, "Spasiba, Mina," like literally, thank you, mine, for saving me. Yeah, trying to think of. I didn't watch a lot of Russian movies while I was there. Some of the classics I saw, like a White Sun of the Desert. There's a tradition among cosmonauts to watch that before any space mission. Oh yeah, I know a dying tanker scene you're talking about. Yeah, there's a in the movie Burnt by the Sun 2 by Mikhalkov. There's a scene where a T-34 tanker, like their tank has been knocked out, and there's this tanker who's been burned and obviously dying, and he's lying on his back, and this female who's a medic, I guess she's also playing the main character's daughter, and the main character is played by the director Mikhalkov himself, the medic is trying to help the this man who's obviously dying, and then he actually says to her, "Show me your tits." Like, I'm not even, he's like, "Покажите мне сиськи." And she does, and there's like, if I remember correctly, there's like some big musical swell because this is so romantic. Oh, that is his own daughter. That's his real daughter. Wow. No, I have. Yeah, somebody's remembering my thing about the proper way to steal valor is to pretend to be an astronaut. But yeah, the thing about the Soyuz rocket. So Soyuz rockets, well, they do have a cosmodrome now, I think in the Far East, but they were typically launched from the Baikonur facility in Kazakhstan. See, I did see something about a naval. I think there was a video on YouTube about the rolling naval mine on the mountain. I'm gonna grab a drink so I can still keep talking. Just let this next thing load. I hope they don't pick a nightmare. I can't believe we actually finally won that time. Incredible. All right, gotta vote. Gotta vote. Voting is very important. I agree with. Actually, the refinery's all right. Nah, dude, the refinery. No. What exactly is the new TNO? Is the new order, right? Isn't that like a mod for a Paradox game? I will look up after this. I'll look up that mine video. But no, I haven't played. If that is what I think it is, no, I haven't played that one. Unfortunately, I haven't played a Paradox game in a long time. I think the last one I played was probably EU4. Oh, it's Hearts of Iron 4. Okay. Huh. No, I just played, what was it, Wolfenstein, The New Order. Let's see, do I have a gray shirt? Let's be this guy. Demolitions, of course. All right. Yeah, a lot of people tell me that a good explanation for why, you get so many Wehraboo's is because of these Paradox games like Hearts of Iron, and people thinking like, oh, if the Germans had only done this, if they had just done Operation Sea Lion, like, oh yeah, that's yeah, well, it's this, if only Hitler had pushed the do Operation Sea Lion button instead of the don't do it, then yeah, it would have changed everything, right? And it's just. Or one of the dumbest things is, oh, if they didn't turn south to encircle Kiev, they would have taken Moscow, and it's like, where do you even begin with that? Luckily, I don't have to explain why that's wrong because David M. Glantz and plenty of other people already did that work. Sounds like our two AKs are in sync, basically. Okay, that's a good way to start off the map. Get out of my way, sir.
Reloading.
Okay, those pipes are usually a problem. A noticeably based eye. Interesting name. Okay.
Area is clear.
I'm gonna try to snipe the objective. I usually get killed before doing this. Yeah, the thing about Wehrabooism is like if you grew up in an English-speaking country, especially like for my generation, like everybody goes through that phase just because of all these stupid documentaries and pop history books, and even documentaries that I love. I know that they had a lot of problems. Like I love the World at War documentaries because I grew up with them. But man, do they get a lot of things wrong. It's mainly things that people believed back then because it's the only information they had. And I mean, to their credit, when speaking about World at War, in World at War, they actually were talking to a lot of the people who were involved in the war, right? I mean, like they interviewed Albert Speer in World at War. They interviewed Traudl Junge, the secretary, Hitler's secretary that you see in The Downfall. Just catching up. Yeah, Potential History did a really good video on that. And probably in the future, I'll do some anti-Wehraboo videos where we'll deal with that issue of how they basically couldn't have won. I wanted to say about the question about Kiev. Damn it, I was late. About Kiev and encirclement. I think it is true. If they hadn't tried to take Kiev, if they had devoted those forces that they used to try to take Kiev to Donbass, or try to like cut it off or something, yeah, probably they would have been more successful. But on the other hand, they're idiots, right? So I think they made the attack on Kiev because they really thought that it would succeed. They thought that the resistance would melt away, and they would be in Kiev, and they'd have this great propaganda victory of Russian troops parading down Hershatik, and that's why because here's the thing, it's never really about Donbass. Like now they're saying it's all about protecting Donbass. It's like, no, it was never about that. Donbass was about controlling Ukraine, and that's why they got involved in the first place. And so they can say whatever they want now, but we can tell by their actions, and we can tell by the troops that they tried to take Kiev with, airborne troops and stuff like that. That was not a feint, right? Could it have been a feint if they were really just concerned with Donbass? Then, like, yeah, sure, that would be a great tactic because no country wants to leave its capital open to attack, right? But the thing is that everything about this whole thing, how amateurish the whole thing has been, makes it painfully clear that the objective was regime change and to basically take a large portion of Ukraine.
If you guys hit M and F1, you'll resupply it quicker at the box.
Oh, what is that? I'll try that next time. That guy actually gave some good advice. So I'm just reading your comments there. Yeah, I mean, it's very clear that they wanted Kiev, but the issue is that they thought they were just going to walk into Kiev, right?
Open your eyes, I'm here too.
I've been here for like twice since I knew that, bro, but alright.
We got these guys.
Yeah, that's it.
Hang on a
Yeah,
second.
that is, bro. Y'all already know what it is.
Mute. There we go. Okay. I don't like a lot of talking. Just me.
Shit, they're trying to take it back.
Let's close the door here. Close that door. You should be dead, dude. Oh, for Christ's sake. They must have kicked open the door. No, that guy just left. Okay. No, 12 to 1, not bad. Yeah, here's the thing. I don't even think Russia is... I don't think they're switching just to take part of Donbass and, like, call it a victory. I think they still believe that I think they want to do as much damage as possible, and I think they believe that they can try to pause the situation around Kiev and Chernihiv and Kharkiv and then attack later. And that's why it's important that Ukraine needs to keep up the pressure on them. And, when you say getting high on their own supply of propaganda, absolutely. Because you got to understand, the way the system works in Russia is like loyalty is rewarded and dissent is at best like makes you suspect, right? And the idea the idea amongst great Russian chauvinists against Ukrainians is that basically Ukrainians are really Russians who just forgot that they're Russian, and these Western people from Halichina, always with the help of some Western power, are going and sort of like beguiling or hypnotizing the rest of Ukrainians into thinking that they should be anti-Russia, right? And that's like that. They literally believe that's true, and that's why you could take a city like Mariupol, and it gets they pound it into dust, right? And then they act like that is Ukraine's fault, right? And see, in reality, they just hate Ukrainians. Like, even though the Russian-speaking ones, like, they have no respect for these people. And let's try this real quick. I want to try this thing the guy said. Oh my God, it's true. You can resupply faster that way. Okay. Yeah, so in terms of when you talk about like how Putin looks right now, it's kind of hard with him because he's, his face is pumped full of like Botox or something, so kind of comes and goes. Eat it. Now clear out that hallway. Yeah, I don't see. I mean, for one thing, like Ukraine can't let Russia take the Black Sea littoral like that. Like, that's going to have to be either retaken, or basically Ukraine just needs to cause such a defeat that Russia just has to withdraw from that. And that's what I see as a possibility, because if they keep attacking the supply lines, if they keep attacking the supply lines and cutting off some of these big groupings around Kiev and stuff like that, eventually they'll just collapse. And then you get mass surrenders, and you get basically, morale breaking down to the point where no one will fight anymore. And that's when Russia is going to have to start seriously negotiating. Because one thing is, Russia's arms industry is really hurt by these sanctions. Ah, shit, I got off the point, damn it. Because I don't get credit for the capture there. That sucks. I don't think in the new version of this game, they don't get a technical, and who the hell shot me? Oh, those guys. Okay. I thought those were our guys for a second. All right. Yeah, I still don't know if Shoigu actually had a heart attack, because the only source I know about that is the advisor to one of the national security advisors, Anton Heroshenko. Your question about the IFAC, I wish I could say off the top of my head. I would say look up a charity called United Help for Ukraine, because they are based in the U.S. and I think they're working with people they are shipping over like actual physical equipment, right? So that's United Help for Ukraine, and they might be able to help hand that over. I know there's like some Ukrainian-owned shipping company in New Jersey. I don't remember the name of it, but they've been doing a lot of this stuff. I guess shipping stuff at their own expense to get it over there. That, by the way, here's the thing. This is another thing that a lot of people don't really talk about. if Russia decides that if they really think they're going to try to fight this war, if they think they're going to try to fight this war like long term or whatever, apart from the problems they're going to have with trying to mobilize more people, the other thing is that there is no equivalent in Russia of the Ukrainian volunteer movement, right? Because we talk about the volunteer battalions all the time, but what a lot of people don't understand is that in Ukraine, like volontaire, talk about volunteers, it means all these people who get together to like fundraise to supply the army, to supply them with all manner of equipment, from the medical supplies like the stuff I delivered to things like thermal sights and stuff like that. That's the volunteer movement, right? And just we're talking like millions of people just putting their meager resources together to get equipment for the army and to train people as medics, to train people for the territorial defense and stuff like that. Russia doesn't have anything like that. Russia doesn't have civil society, right? Anytime people try to get together and do something, for, let's say, some kind of public service in Russia, anytime they try to do that, the government steps in and basically takes it over, right? Because there's very strict restrictions on like volunteer activity and charity work in Russia. And so if you want to have an NGO or something like that, I think we have one guy left, there's still one. But yeah, the issue is that even when you have something like positive, like for example, in 2010, there was a big heat wave around Moscow, and it caused these fires in these peat bogs around the city. Okay, so I'm not an expert on these, but Moscow is surrounded by peat bogs, which basically will burn, right? And they can start these horrendous fires, and the fires were so bad that smoke from the fires actually came into Moscow, even in the center, because I was living in the center at the time, and this lasted for weeks. I could not see the street from my balcony because of the smoke that rolled into the city, right? And part of the reason why the peat bog fires were burning so much was because of corruption and lack of funding. A lot of the fire departments in the like Moscow Oblast, in the smaller towns and stuff like that, the people, basically the towns closer to where the peat bogs were burning, their fire department equipment was inadequate. Not enough trucks, or the pipes and the hydrants or whatever were not, didn't have water, or leaking, stuff like that. And let's see, observer. Look at that texter pop in. All right. So basically, this was a huge problem because in some cases, like people's like dachas were burning down. I mean, like ordinary people, and then obviously there's smoke everywhere rolling into the city. It was really awful, I can tell you. And I think it was like mostly like former, retired firefighters and ordinary volunteers tried to get together to start some kind of volunteer organization to support the existing fire departments and help them put out these fires, right? And the government, of course, took it over, and basically, I don't remember exactly how this ended up, but the point is that here's a bunch of people saying, hey, we got a problem here, shit's on fire, yo. And they try to get together and handle the problem. And basically the government it views this with suspicion, right? Same thing with the Besmертный Polk, or Immortal Regiment, right? Like that used to be just this civil society thing. It was like some well-meaning citizens who just thought, wouldn't it be nice, since we celebrate Victory Day all the time, wouldn't it be nice if if people got pictures of their relatives that had died, and march with them, so it's like they're still alive, right? And it was just a civic thing, and it was a grassroots thing. But of course, the government sees that, and they see an opportunity for propaganda. Well, first of all, they see a threat because, you know, citizens working together to do things without our permission, that's bad. So, we have a commander here. All right. So, you know, it became this this government propaganda exercise, and it was turned into basically a political weapon to use in countries like Ukraine or Georgia or Moldova, but also other countries as well, like Western countries. And I remember one year there was this like idiot who was on RT, and he was attending one of these marches sponsored by the Russian Foreign Ministry in London. This was in London, and this guy, because he's British, he, you know, instead of marching with a poster or placard of one of his relatives, because I mean, as a British person, surely you had some relative who fought in the Second World War, right? But apparently this particular Brit did not, and he was holding a picture of Motorola and Givi, those two quote, 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 separatist fighters in Donbass. Motorola, of course, is a Russian citizen from Rostov Oblast. I should say he was before he got in an elevator and got blown to pieces. Givi, it's an interesting story about him. Givi was blown up the day after I arrived in Ukraine in 2017. I just got the news when I woke up. And yeah, so I mean, think about this. This is supposedly a march to honor people in World War II, and at many of these marches, people would be marching with, you know, pictures of people who didn't even fight in World War II, who weren't even born, you know, at that time, right? And so it became a political thing. Here's another thing you'll see sometimes, ever since it became like a political propaganda ritual. A lot of times you see people taking photos after these parades are over, and there's a bunch of these like, shit, get out of the way. Yeah, see, you're gonna die anyway, dude. There we go. Molotov's rolling. It's fun. He's gonna roll back. Here he goes. Oh, this is like the perpetual motion grenade. I have a video about that. Sometimes like the physics engine gets crazy, and shit, I should. It's gonna roll. It'll roll back. Okay, maybe. Yep. No. Here it goes. Okay. All right. I don't have time to stick around, but yeah. So what you'll see is pictures of all these, you know, the posters of the dead relatives on sticks, and they're just filling up trash cans along the parade route, right? Because basically everyone's done with the parade, and those pictures aren't their own relatives. They're just handed out. They're just random people who fought in the war and, you know, died later. Yeah, by the way, there's a little joke about Motorola. So, you know, when he, after he exploded, people said they should change his name to Samsung Galaxy Note 7. And apparently that had a reputation for exploding. Okay, we got company here. Alright. So.
Charlie, secure!
Oh.
This area's clear!
Call for support. Just trying to catch up. Oh, cool. Okay, yeah, I mean, if you could just ask him, like, what was the source on that? I was just curious, because, I mean, I could totally see them doing it. You know, the thing about the Russian military is they were spending so many years doing all these snap drills and readiness drills and just, you know, just continuous drilling, which, you know, ought to be good, right? It should produce results. The problem is that many of their exercises are largely staged, and as a result, you know, they weren't really building readiness. And so what seemed to happen is that when planning this assault, especially because they thought the Ukrainians would just cave in, it seems to me what happened was everybody, like, you know, the airborne guys were like, well, we want to do an air assault because we did this at Zapad 2021 or some shit like that, right? And And they were, Shoigu or Gerasimov is like, yeah, sure, do your airborne assault. And then the Navy guys probably like, we want to do amphibious assault. Yeah, okay, do that. We practice that as well. And then of course, I feel like basically all these different guys were lobbying to to get a chance to steal some glory or just get some get a piece of the action basically. And it just wasn't planned. I guess they all thought like the Ukrainians aren't going to fight, so like yeah, we can assault an airfield. Yeah, we can do, we can send airborne here. We can drop Spetsnaz here or whatever. And well, you see what actually happened, right? So didn't work out too well. Oh, if they can find footage of that, that would be great. That would be awesome. Because it's one of those things, it's like the Ghost of Kiev. Like, okay, like the Ghost of Kiev, we all know it's bullshit, but it's like that meme says, I want to believe, right? I think the Ghost of Kiev is a great legend. I mean, it's pretty obvious that these aerial kills were likely done by like a number of different planes plus air defense, probably mostly air defense. But still, the idea that it's like one guy in a MiG-29 taking out all these planes, it's inspiring. First of all, the term Russian bot, someone's asking about Russian bots. I can tell you that a lot of times people say bots and they should be saying trolls because they are actual people. See, bots typically don't, the bots they use usually do not interact. They are designed to boost like hashtags or boost, basically, I forgot we're not insurgents this time. Do we have anyone else on the point? Okay, hopefully I'll get past that. So, as far as like true pro-Russian trolls, you get one or two from time to time, angry response to a tweet or something. Half the time I don't see them because Twitter automatically hides it. I got like one genuine troll, like obvious Russian troll comment on my old blog a long time ago, and I knew it was this because that same comment was left by like another person in several different places, and that's how you know that you're dealing with a troll when you see the same comment coming from different users. But a lot of times they stay away from me because I know pretty much all their tricks. So the people from RT and stuff like that, they know it's best not to mess with me. Let's see. So question. Okay, so about Zelensky. So I can tell you that pretty quickly. The short story is simply that Zelensky, he had questionable ties to the oligarch Ihor Kolomoisky, and a lot of people initially were thinking, like, is he going to do stuff like get Kolomoisky his Privatbank back, right? And actually, initially Zelensky pretty much made it clear that he's not, he's not a puppet of Kolomoisky. He made it very clear that, he was initially, like, him and his party, Sluha Naroda, they were actually doing a lot of reforms and getting a lot of stuff done. But by about 2020, he was, guys in the shadow there. He had kind of started to backslide, and there were problems with like the Constitutional Court. There were problems with the COVID, handling COVID, but mostly it was stalling on. It was kind of like backsliding, like are we going to go back to the corrupt old days? And blank there. Is that? And so that's what people are disappointed with. And there are a lot of little things like, this is this one detail. There is a Crimean Tatar TV channel called ATR, and it before the annexation, it obviously operated out of Crimea, And then when the Russians took over, because the Russians being Russians, they basically closed that channel. And so what happened was the channel reopened in what do you call it? The channel reopened in government-controlled Ukraine, and it was partially subsidized by the government. And one thing is, like in 2020, the government, I mean, this is not exactly Zelensky's fault, but obviously his party was still a majority in the Rada, and his, basically they cut the subsidy for ATR, and now ATR is supported by like Patreon and just some like Crimean Tatar businessmen. And so, I mean, that's just like one little thing. Another thing was like Zelensky, I think it was 2021 or maybe late 2020, he was in an interview for like Axios, and he was asked if he sees like Russia as the aggressor or what, or no, he's asked like the interviewer said like, well, you're at war with Russia, and he like kind of denied it, like basically just tried to sort of weasel word his way out of it, and that pissed off a lot of people, because one of Zelensky's vulnerabilities is that a lot of people act like he's insufficiently patriotic, you know what I mean, and or he's too conciliatory to the pro-Russian elements in the country. And it's kind of an unfair characterization of Zelensky, really. Unfortunately, I mean, before all this happened, unfortunately, there was kind of a mentality in Ukraine where if you, if you're not like, if you talk about like trying to build more unity, some people see that as you must be talking about making concessions to pro-Russians, and like, no, it doesn't necessarily always mean that, but there's a lot of paranoia because it's paranoia because of what people are used to, right? Like Russia has often used a lot of subtle tactics to get this kind of influence, right? Like Soviet nostalgia, for example. And they're just like, oh, there's nothing wrong with remembering stuff from when you grew up. And yeah, in a vacuum, like that is true. But what Russia does is like they get people, they get like an audience with tactics like that, and then they start ramping up the propaganda, right? So Zelensky was he used to get a lot of flack from that, especially from Poroshenko supporters, and then he was going after Poroshenko at a time when there's a Russian military buildup, and people were like, hey, maybe this isn't the best time for this, right? And that's what, now that everything has happened as it unfolded, it's really nice to see that, yes, they, Poroshenko and Zelensky and pretty much everybody, they buried the hatchet mostly. And, now, I mean, I'm just amazed that Poroshenko, a guy who's a billionaire, is staying in the country and has a, militia unit. Yeah, I'd really like to see how that Star Streak thing pans out. That'd be nice. Khodorkovsky. This question about Mikhail Khodorkovsky. I think he does a lot of good things now. I think it is important, though, to remember that, he wasn't a clean figure. Him and Menatop Bank had, some very dirty dealings. But it was a country at the time where pretty much every businessman was involved in some criminal activity, and whether Khodorkovsky was telling the truth about trying to clean things up before he went to jail, we'll never know. But one thing you do see is that after he went to jail and after he got out, he does seem to be supporting good causes and trying to redeem himself. I don't agree with some of the stuff that they've said about sanctions on Russia. They try to say that, we have to be very careful to make the sanctions only affect the elite. Otherwise, like the rest of the people might, they'll get like a siege mentality and they'll side with the government. I say, well, let's roll the dice, right? Because I'm sorry, but we can't let these people do this stuff to Ukraine or Syria for that matter, and get away with it. I mean, plenty of Ukrainians are they're being killed and displaced. If we need to create severe inconveniences for ordinary Russians to stop this, then so be it, right? Just reading stuff there.
Yeah, come on, we gotta go.
And this guy's got a pretty cool uniform. What he's got? He's DUBDU. Oh, it's just the same as mine. Okay. Yeah, it's like the same thing with like Navalny. It's like Navalny has some huge problems, but I mean, really, here's the thing. Navalny doesn't matter anymore. He's not going to survive prison, probably. I mean, let's just be realistic about it. I don't see him surviving prison. Something's going to happen to him. It'll be like Magnitsky. He might have some kind of problem, and then they'll deny him proper medical care. He's done. I really think he never should have went back to Russia, at least not when he did. I mean, you want to call it brave, fine, but like, he's basically neutralized. Where's oh, okay, there we go. Looking for the commander. Look at this brave ass fucker. If I don't hit him, it's because I'm just suppressing. Like, if I do hit him, then that's my excellent marksmanship. Oh, shit, gas. Oh, I don't have a mask. Shit. Alright, I guess I'll just stay here. Oh, fully loaded. Okay. Get out of here. Okay. Got a drink here. Probably shouldn't go there. Looks like they got the commander. Hope that gas dissipates. They should have made the gas green because it would look like chlorine. That's something the insurgents. Oh shit! Let's get out of here. He's coughing like he has COVID.
Hey, I'm reloading.
When Navalny got arrested, when he came back, I mean, they did I think those were like the last big rallies that they had. But, here's the thing. Belarus is a country where people are much, worse off than in Russia. And they had huge demonstrations. They had some really huge demonstrations, and still, the regime was able to keep enough of its security people on its side to sustain it, you know what I mean? And so, if Lukashenko can hold on like that, then clearly, Putin's going to take a lot more to take down. God damn it, I got to put my sight back up. Commander still alive? Yes, he is. Okay, good. Shit. There's like a whole squad of them. Fuck. Was that a rocket? Oh, let's see. Yeah, I mean, he did get protest, but the protest, that's the thing, like, Russia doesn't have this tradition of, like, long occupation-style protests like Maidan, right? And that's where he went wrong, I think, is, because there were a lot of unauthorized protests. A lot of people came out, a lot of people were arrested, but then what happened was the opposition, they wanted to do their whole smart voting initiative, and they wanted to focus on the elections, right? And then, of course, what the fuck are these two idiots doing? Jesus. Here's a different question. So, Soul Man, about learning their language. So, I have a lot of experience in this, just because when I was studying Russian in high school, our teacher was a linguist, and he spoke several languages. And one thing he did is, like, when we were beginning, as like, I was a high school sophomore, it's 10th grade, and in the beginning of class, like the first lesson ever, I don't remember us actually learning any Russian words or anything. What we were doing is we were discussing, like, the nature of the language, right? It's like an Indo-European Slavic language, and then he explained to us Indo-European languages. He showed us comparisons of what they call kinship terminology, like, brother, father, mother, like that, and he's trying to show us, like, the similarities between these languages and how we classify them and everything. And what he also taught us was he taught us grammar, like, in terms of, like, English grammar, because we don't really truly learn grammar like in elementary school, right? I mean, if you ask the average American what is the difference between, let's say, present perfect and past simple, most of these people will just sort of stare at you. What the fuck are you talking about? Like, I mean, the thing is, they will use these tenses, and they will often use them correctly with no problem, but they do not know what they're called, or, why we use them, you know what I mean? Why didn't I get credit for that? Anyway. So, he taught us this grammar and everything. So the key to learning languages, first of all, like, research the language you're learning, find out what family it's in and what is unique about it, right? Like, for example, Turkic languages are what we call agglutinated, which means that things like aspect and tense are made by adding suffixes onto words, and you may add multiple suffixes to make all those, modifications, basically. Fuck it. It doesn't count. Okay. So then, when you're trying to learn any new language, first thing you need to know is you need to know all the pronouns, right? So, I, you, he, she, it, we, they, and usually there's often like a plural or formal you term. And of course, every language is different. Like, for example, in Turkic languages, you do not have gendered pronouns. So, for example, he, she, it is always O, right? So, what are you doing there, buddy? Die. So, for example, same with like Tatar. In Tatar, the pronoun would be ul. So, ul could be he, could be she, could be it, doesn't matter. And then you have like a lot of your Romance languages tend to just have like two genders, and Slavic languages you'll have three. You'll have the masculine, feminine, and neuter. And so you learn the pronouns first. That's why it's so funny. You see a lot of these people. I had some right-wing guy have a meltdown on me just the other day because of the pronouns of my bio, right? Pronouns, and it's like, these are the most basic words in like any language, right? Like, there's nothing new or unusual about them. But now, so many of these conservatives seem to think like that pronouns are something that liberals invented or something like that. And so you learn the pronouns first, and then another thing you want to learn first in a language is a lot of languages will have some basic way of saying, like, there is or there is not something, and it can often be used to say, like, do you have something? Like, for example, in Turkish, if I want to ask if there's bread, I can say ekmek var mı, right? Which is, ekmek is bread, var is like saying there is, and mı just makes that a question. So, ekmek varma, is there bread, right? And if I was going to answer that, I'd say, yeah, there's bread. I'd just say ekmek var or just var. And or if you, some people kind of pronounce it. There's like some Turks or accent they pronounce it as like vash. It's like the R is sounds like a j. But yeah, get out of the way there. But see, if you know that term for like, is there something, and yes there is, or no there's not, if you know that much, you can actually make a lot of basic, like very basic dialogues that way, right? And then the other thing is, obviously you need to know your question words, like what, when, where, who, okay? And if you know those, the question words, your basic, your pronouns, your question words, and you know that basic, is there any whatever, or there's not, you can start building some practical dialogues very quickly, right? So then you got, what is your name? My name is. How are you? Just really basic stuff like that. But the trick to learning languages is like you have to have a plan. You have to have a strategy, right? So you start from the really basic stuff so you can get good at that, and then you get on to learning like more verbs and learning how to conjugate them and everything. So, okay, let me catch up on all these questions. There's a lot. I will have to scroll up just a little bit. Let me just. I missed one of your questions. Okay, the question about Call of Duty 3. Unfortunately, I never got a chance to play that. What I can say is that I played the Call of Duty Big Red 1, which was a port for, I think, Xbox and PS2. And it was actually called something like Call of Duty 2 Big Red 1 or whatever. So, I think it came out before the proper, like, real Call of Duty 2. That was pretty good, though. That was the first Call of Duty game I ever played, and I gotta say I was pretty impressed by it. Where's the commander? Gotcha. Okay, let me just, let's see. Yeah, Hungarian, that's a language I don't know much about because it's not Indo-European. I know like some basic pronunciation in it, so I could sort of read it, but I have like zero Hungarian. It's interesting, how like in many countries, like police is something like, policia or police or whatever. And then even in Turkish, they just say polis. But in Hungarian, it's like rendorshed or something like that. It's crazy. Let's see. The NFK, or the Russian guy, I know of him. I watched a little bit of his stuff, but I haven't seen much. I guess we won't see any more of him since YouTube's banned in Russia. Are people cold in Ukraine? Some places have been, the gas has been knocked out, so they don't have heating, so that is a problem. Luckily, warm clothing, one thing that the volunteer movement does is they get warm clothing for everybody. So the main issue is, gas, and also like, especially like elderly people who can't move when they're stuck in their apartments. It's very dangerous because they're older and vulnerable. Let's get that door closed. Okay, let me catch up. So yeah, I'm watching a thing about Duolingo. I hate Duolingo with a passion because I actually tried to use it to learn Ukrainian in like 2016, because it was 2015. I can't remember exactly, but people said, "Oh, there's this free app called Duolingo," and I saw that had Ukrainian, and I wanted to really start formally studying it because I had basically picked up a lot of Ukrainian just kind of by osmosis. And because I had some Polish lessons when I was a teenager, and I had like, before I left America, I had Teach Yourself Ukrainian, and so I had a little foundation, and I just kind of picked it up over the years. And in 2015, I wanted to actually get better at it. So I tried Duolingo, and the problem with Duolingo is that it doesn't do like a placement test. It just kind of assumes you're a total beginner, and it assumes you're a total beginner, and you can't like switch to a higher level. So it forced me to do all this really basic stuff. And then what really made me fed up with it was when we got to this. I got to this point where you see sometimes like in in Ukrainian and Russian, there's more than one way to say things. You know what I mean? And there's different ways to say things, and sometimes it would say translate this sentence, and like I knew how to translate it easily, so I'd write what I would use in that situation. And they're like, no, you should have used this, and I'm like, this literally, I know this means the same thing, right? Like I could talk to native speakers who would tell you that. But the thing is, Duolingo won't let you go to those higher levels until you go through the, till you go through the purgatory, right? So I just got fed up with it and probably nearly broke my phone in half. And since then, like, it's my sworn enemy. Okay, we'll do that one. It's become my sworn enemy. But yeah, in terms of language learning, like, it depends on the language. I could say there's a, let's see. Someone asked about Russian trophy wives. I'll tell you this, any guy who has a Russian trophy wife, in my experience, these guys tend to be in a living hell, and they are totally whipped. There's a lot of dudes you'd see. I know people who, I'm talking about like normal guys who are just like expats living in Russia or something, and they marry like normal women. They meet them in the course of everyday activities, or just going out or doing stuff. And these people can be happily married, but you have to understand that in Russia, there's an element of like of transaction, in some relationships and marriages, and in the case of like these men who go on like foreign dating and they come back with a bride or something like that, normally like that woman is going to extract a certain amount of money and other material benefits out of this whole thing, and I've known a few of these situations, and it's quite sad. I would highly recommend against moving to Russia. Okay, they're not really very welcoming of any foreigners, really. They're not like openly hostile, but let's see, I'm just looking. But the thing is, things are only going to get worse in Russia. I can assure you of that. And so, yeah, I would not. Even just getting there is going to be a pain in the ass because of their the situation with aviation. Guess he's not going to call anything in. Okay, let's see.
Hey, I'm loading.
Yeah, I'll tell you another thing about the stereotypical trophy wives, and this is true about Ukraine too. Is like that type of woman in that country. It's interesting. They are. I guess in the opinion of some men, they find that's attractive, but to me, I have never found that type of woman attractive. They are. They often, cultivate a certain look. They get work done on their lips, and they wear a lot of makeup, and the whole thing is like, we spend so much time looking beautiful just for you, But I find them this type, first of all, insufferable to talk to, and I have had the displeasure of talking to them on some occasions, but also just, I do not find this look of theirs attractive. The obvious, like I said, obvious work done on the lips, and a lot of them tend to adopt this hairstyle of like a ponytail sort of pulled back very aggressively, and they just kind of all look the same, and I just do not find that attractive at all. In Russia, what I found the most attractive was just normal everyday women that you see on the metro. You know, same thing with like Ukraine. You know, it's just the people you run into in normal course of life, not the people hanging out in expat clubs or something like that. You know, that's my dating advice. Plastic, yes, plastic. Yeah, plastic is a good way to describe it. Yeah, because see, and like I said, it's very transactional because these women, you know, what they'll say is like, you know, a real man pays for all dinner and buys presents and takes me places, and you know, and it's funny because like a lot of guys, you know, they get desperate and they will go along with all this, and I've seen it happen to some expats where they just you know, they just get taken for a ride, but they go along with it, you know. And I think that what they don't understand is like, you know, if you put more work into yourself and being better material for a relationship instead of just looking for a shortcut, which is, you know, trying to use your American citizenship and relative wealth to get it, because you just, all you're getting is like a fake relationship, you know what I mean? And you're losing your money and dignity in the process. Whereas if, you know, with self-improvement, you would feel better about yourself and you could cultivate a real relationship based on, you know, mutual interest and respect, right? But, you know, there's a whole mail order bride industry that was designed to take advantage of you know, men's vulnerability towards that. And of course, what's interesting is that in Ukraine, the industry is very sophisticated, where a lot of times, like, no marriages actually happen because the men are not even talking to the women. They are talking to other women, and it's literally nothing but a scam. Like, the entire thing is a scam. No one plans to get married at all. A lot of times, sometimes the men are actually talking to other men. Typically, these agencies, they hire students. The students need to make extra money. The students that speak English, they get the letters from the man, and then they write on behalf of the girl. And then the girl is just some like random, you know, some random girl on social media gets some money to use her pics, and then they, you know, they hook these guys. And it's almost like sometimes the guys seem to know that they're not really going to get married. They like this idea that they have this girlfriend somewhere, and they buy them presents and stuff like that online. I mean, it's almost like cam whoring without the cam. I think it's incredibly stupid, but, you know, a lot of these guys have a sort of very predatory nature towards women. You know, they look at these women in countries that suffer from corruption and poverty, and they see that as their advantage. So, you know, when these guys get screwed over, I don't really pity them, and I kind of actually halfway root for the women getting the money. There was a story in the BBC that was it got a lot of backlash in Ukraine because it was about these women who were scamming, but what it did is that it actually like showed pictures of them and had their names and everything, while it didn't have the name of the British guy who was basically trying to buy a bride, right? And it portrayed this guy as a victim, and I mean, in a sense, he was a victim, but he was essentially trying to take advantage of, you know, impoverished women, and basically they just turned the tables on him, right? So, let's see. Just going back here. Yeah, if you're looking for a TDF girl, you need to join the TDF. That's what I say. You gotta impress them. Ah, god damn it! I should have just ran for it. Let me get.
I'm ready to go. Let's go.
Okay. Let's see. Trying to catch up with the questions there. Yeah, I love Dirty Rotten Scoundrels as a great film. I used to, when I was like 6 or 7, I used to watch that. We rented it, my mom and I rented it, and we watched that like multiple times. Of course, I didn't get many of the jokes, but at that age, you know, I remember watching Steve Martin playing Ruprecht the Monkey Boy, as they called him, and it was just hilarious. Great movie, though. I want to catch up with all these questions there. Yeah, speaking of Philippines, that guy, the 8chan guy, Ron Watkins or whatever, he moved to Philippines, I guess, and then he was like running a bunch of porn sites in Japan or some shit like that. And this is the guy who brought us QAnon. You know, it's funny, like the whole QAnon thing is about human trafficking and all this stuff. And it turns out the guy behind it is an American middle-aged expat who moved to the Philippines and ran pornographic websites. And it's like, you think this guy is really, you know, the best crusader against against sexual exploitation? I mean, I would, if it was shown that this guy was actually involved in human trafficking, I would not be surprised in the slightest, right? Oh shit. Okay, we need to get a frag in there. Okay, let's go roll down the stairs. Okay, I think we got the room clear. Shit. Fuck. The guy's outside. Gunship. Calling the gunship. Gunship. Yes. Okay. Yeah, that scene, Welcome to Hell. Yes. I didn't even know, you know, I didn't know that he went on to play Palpatine, and I just thought at one point, I was like, wait a minute, he looks familiar. And then it was like, yeah, it was, but yeah, he's also in the final part of the movie when Steve Martin, he says like, Andre, sorry about your VCR, if you just give me your address, I'll send you a check, and he's just like, oh, shut up. Classic line. I think I missed it. Okay, I think I'm caught up on the questions. Damn, that sucks. Yeah, I mean, a lot of these, I mean, when you're talking about these, you know, white dudes going over to the Philippines, I had a friend who lived in Thailand, and he says, like, yeah, you'll see, like, you see a lot of these same guys there, you know, they're there to basically just take advantage, and yeah, it says, and I can tell you, like, you know, you can hear some, I run into some of these people in Russia, although at the time that I moved there, things were changing a lot, and so what you had is you had a lot of these guys going to Russia, having read stuff from like the Exile, and they're on those mail order bride sites and everything, but the country had changed, and so they got there and they started to get horrified at the reality that simply having, you know, being like a middle-class American guy with an American passport didn't guarantee you a 20-year-old, you know, potential model, right? And so these guys were often insufferable to be around. Damn, that sucks. Man, I'm really sorry to hear that, Freebird. I mean, it's yeah, a lot of times society hasn't quite caught up to the reality of exploitation. You know, especially if it's like a man being exploited by a woman. A lot of times, in a lot of societies, they just act like, oh, that can't possibly happen. You know, and that's very wrong, to say the least. Question about corruption. Yeah, corruption is still an issue. I mean, it's a huge issue in a lot of former Soviet countries. especially in Russia, you know, there's corruption everywhere, but the high-level corruption takes up an estimated like quarter of the annual GDP. But the other thing is that, you know, the thing about corruption in like Russia or even Ukraine is that ordinary people can sometimes use corruption to their advantage. You know, you can, if you need a license for something, you can bribe someone and get that license. And, you know, because what sucks about the West is we have a lot of corruption now, but the problem is that you have to be rich to get access to it. So if you need like some little thing done, and you're just an ordinary person, you can't pay someone $200 to get it done, right? But corruption, yeah, it really is pretty much everywhere in Russia. It's not always as blatantly harmful, I would say. You know, sometimes it's just businesses paying a little money to get past some, you know, kind of stupid, useless regulation. That's why there's a lot of times among the left in the West, I mean, they don't get a lot of things about Russia, but sometimes they see liberals or opposition people talking about getting rid of government regulations in, like in Russia, for example, and they think, well, this sounds like libertarians or right-wing people in the U.S., where they talk about, oh, we got to get rid of these regulations, right? But it's very different in Russia, because like in the States, the regulations that businesses want to get rid of are things that, for example, open them up to like lawsuits or whatever. You know, it's like safety. They want to get rid of safety and environmental regulations, right? In Russia, there's a bunch of regulations which are basically like they don't serve any public interest. They are there so that inspectors can get bribes from businesses, right? And I've only seen a few episodes of Servant of the People. It is actually pretty funny for an Eastern European sitcom. But yeah, I would say like little things, like, okay, in the second episode, there's a scene where the main character's dad, what's his name, Holoborodko, his dad is pulled over by the cops, right? And you actually see the cops talking first, and they say, we need to get something to eat. And the guy says, like, well, here's who's paying for lunch right now, and he waves the car to pull over, right? And because that's usually how it happens, like in Ukraine and Russia, they have traffic police that just kind of sit by the side of the road, and they have a little baton, and if they wave at you, then you have to pull over. And typically this means they're going to ask for a bribe, right? And I'll get out of here. So in this scene, like, the whole scene is they're about to ask him for a bribe, and then they realize that he's the father of the president, so they don't. And it's kind of funny how he plays it off. But yeah, and also I can tell you like a real life story. I had a friend of mine who was a American expat who actually drove in Russia, which I don't know why you'd want to do that. But he had his car, and he used to put in his passport, because when they pull you over, they ask for your documents, and in his passport, he would put $100 bill, right? So when they asked for his documents, they would see the money right there, and usually like there are different ways you can ask. When you want to offer a bribe, you say like, is there any way we can take care of this now, right? And then slip them the money, and then you're done, right? In fact, I can even tell you, there was a comedy show in Russia, and I can't remember the name of it, but it's like a sketch show, like kind of Saturday Night Live type thing, and they had a running character, and it was like Sergei the Honest Policeman, right? And keep in mind, this is like this is in Putin time. I first saw this in like 2006, and it's like the Honest Policeman, and the whole joke in every episode is like how ridiculously poor this guy is, him and his family, because he's a policeman who is completely honest and doesn't he doesn't take bribes, and so he's just, wait, oh shit, didn't even notice that they, who is, I thought we secured that objective. What the fuck?
Fuck! They took Alpha!
What the, I assumed my team was competent. Okay. my favorite part in Soviet history, I don't know, it's like, you know, as a person who spent a long time studying the, you know, the World War II, you know, it's tempting to say that, but, you know, I didn't have to live through any of this. I think probably the best time is when it ended. I mean, it was you know, a painful process, but it's something that had to happen. And a lot of people also forget that, like, the many of the bad things that happened after the fall of the Soviet Union happened because of conditions that the Soviet Union had created, whether it was you know, sweeping issues of nationalism under the table instead of dealing with them, or just the way they wrecked the economy. There was basically, you know, no easy way to get out of that. And unfortunately, Russia is going to go through a very similar thing in the future because, you know, like we were talking about on their stream, the stuff they've been doing with foreign assets and the stock market and all that stuff, they're basically, like, they can just forget about foreign investment for like at least a decade after they fix all this stuff with Putin and Ukraine. They're still going to have you know, no investors are gonna have like no faith in them. Yeah, the funny thing is, you know, that's why I call Russia's invasion, it's like bargain bin Barbarossa, because they are, you know, first of all, I mean, they came up with their plan was even dumber than the German plan. Like, the German plan wasn't based on people greeting them with open arms, but more based on the idea that the army would collapse because they would encircle it and cause such casualties, and then get to Moscow, and that would end the war, right? And they thought they would initially they whittled it down to 6 weeks, and the logistics guys said, well, you're gonna run out of, you know, key supplies at this point, and they said, okay, we'll do it in 5 weeks then. And so, yeah, they were extremely arrogant. But of course, it looks like in this case, Russia thought that they would end this in like a matter of maybe a couple days. And that didn't work out. Who's that thing? Someone with the MG3. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, a lot of people miss the fact that the Soviet Union, you know, the Red Army went into the era, the interwar era. They had very advanced, you know, theoretical doctrine and everything. The problem is that a lot of the people involved in that were getting shot, and, you know, there was this habit in the Soviet Union where if you know, you didn't want to be associated with anybody who had been purged or shot. And, you know, so basically you didn't want to be repeating their ideas, in this case, like, you know, deep battle, because you'd be associated with Tukhachevsky, who got shot. So, you know, basically the Soviets had this very developed concept of operational art, but it would take them basically till 1944 to really start implementing it. And some people, at least Glantz, suggests that, at least I'm pretty sure it was Glantz, suggests that the Soviets only really, you know, truly put everything together in 1945 against the Japanese when they invaded Manchuria. So yeah, what made them so vulnerable in the Second World War was the combination of the purges plus the annexation of territory. That, like, the without the benefit of hindsight, the idea of pushing the border as far west as possible certainly makes sense. The problem was that they didn't have time to make a new defensive line. And when the Germans attacked, in many cases you had units at the front who had no ammo, or insufficient ammo, or insufficient fuel. Oh yeah, rockets. Insufficient fuel. In many cases they did not have, in many cases they didn't have fighting positions. So, you know, they didn't have proper trenches dug, or they may have had trenches or, you know, foxholes, but they didn't have bunkers, because there used to be something called the Stalin Line, right? That was a big network of border defenses, rather well built. But the thing is, all of that had to be basically pushed west after 1939, and that was going to create the new Molotov line, it was called, and they didn't finish that. And of course the other thing is that the Soviet government was literally giving Germany oil and raw materials and wheat, which we already covered earlier.
I'm coming for you.
Let's see.
I'm not afraid to die. Yes.
What the hell happened there? We were doing well at first. Hang on a sec. I'm just going to mute everybody again. Everyone shut up. All right. But yeah, no, certainly the Eastern Front was ethnic genocide. I mean, Hitler basically, you know, said it would be a war of extermination, and Stalin supposedly famously referenced that when he said, if he wants a war of extermination, he'll have one.
Be safe, okay?
And yeah, it was, I say, it was, you know, more brutal than, the only thing that compared, of course, was, you know, the Pacific Theater and what the Japanese did to the various populations that they occupied. So in that sense, you know, you had that same sort of ideology driven by, you know, racial supremacy, and or I should say they were driven by an ideology of racial supremacy, and you see what that leads to is basically genocide. And it's also important to point that out when you see people saying stuff about this current war, where they say stuff like, "Oh well, you know, if you think that Russia's going to give up so soon, you obviously haven't heard of World War II." Well, that is a very inaccurate comparison, basically. You know, just because you know, World War II is this kind of existential conflict, right? And again, like, World War II wasn't just Russia. Are you fucking shitting me, dude? Okay, there we have another very realistic A-10 strike on friendly troops. And I survived it too, so yes, this game realistically models the failures of the A-10. This is not going well. Well, now I attacked it. How did I get it? It didn't credit me with it. What the fuck? Let me see. I'm trying to read. Yeah, so they, yeah, I mean, it is a matter of prejudice. You know, it's very common in, you know, fascist societies. There's this feature of fascism that Umberto Eco talks about, where the enemy is portrayed as being both weak and strong at the same time. So on one hand, they'll act like Ukraine was this big, horrible threat to Russia, you know, even talking about how they're supposedly making nuclear weapons and shit. And then on the other hand, they also make fun of them and you know, talk about how weak and cowardly they are and stuff like that. And you know, and it's just a typical feature of you know, well, fascism, basically. You know, and the thing is, I mean, yeah, Putin's society basically ticks every box on any recognized list of fascist, features of fascism, like was it Robert Paxton, or if you prefer, Umberto Eco's list of fascist features. Yeah, well, see, the thing is that nobody really cares. Hang on a second. Okay. I'm just dealing with this guy the way his own government would deal with him. And still surviving. Yeah, so apparently we just got invaded by a Russian Koper. Oh, shit. Well, that was dumb. But, yeah, we'd already taken a point, too. So, yeah, I basically I handled that the way the Russian army would, by getting shot immediately. But yeah, so we don't allow cope in this channel, so fuck off. I think who is the truck? Oh, okay, at least we control the truck now. Can't really use it here in this part. All right, good night, Easy 8. I don't know if you missed that. It's getting late here too. God, it's after 1 o'clock, but you got to at least finish the round, right? Still got 16 people here. Let's see how we're doing so far. Not great. Yeah, exactly. No, by all means, look, they need more people. Go back to Russia and sign up, Also, why are you using decadent Western YouTube? Like, that's banned, and a good patriotic Russian wouldn't use it. Yeah, no, doing fine is when you lose 7 generals in 1 month, right? That's just hilarious. But yeah, that's the thing, is like, it's probably someone who's not actually in Russia now. And it's very common, I gotta say, like, when some people say things, they're trying to be well-meaning, and they're saying things like, what would really undermine Putin is just like, give a bunch of visas to educated young Russians and, like, brain drain them more. And it's like, if you think that's really gonna help, I'll tell you one thing, is that, yeah, a lot of people who leave Russia fucking hate it. And, they are, more inclined to democracy and human rights and stuff like that. But here's a fact that a lot of people don't realize, is that there are a lot of Russians who move abroad, or they immigrate abroad a long time ago, and then they will basically talk your ear off about how decadent the West that they live in, how decadent it is, and how, what a great leader Putin is, and everyone's treating Russia unfairly. And it's like, wouldn't you like to go back? Why do you want to live in the decadent West under these horrible politicians like Joe Biden, when you could go back to Russia and enjoy Vladimir Putin until at least, 2036 or something? It's 20, yeah, something like that. But yeah, that's, sounds like one of the, one of those types that basically, doesn't want to live under Putin's rule, but is, really a fan of him. Other questions? Let's see. Argued with Wehraboo's. Yeah, I can tell you, I got a lot of angry comments. So the comments on the anti-Wehraboo video. The funniest thing about Wehraboo's is the ones who like to deny that that's a thing. Like, they think that Wehraboo is just like something I made up, or something that Reddit made up, and it's like, no, these people have been around. If you act like they don't exist, if you act like they don't exist, then like you haven't spent time, in history forums or at gun shows, reenactments, all that stuff, because they definitely exist. And the thing is, we didn't have a proper term for these people. Like, you couldn't call them all literal Nazis, because many of them weren't. Many of them knew that on a certain level, like, they understood that this was bad, but what they didn't understand is like how glorifying the Wehrmacht, or they didn't understand these concepts like whitewashing and stuff like that. And so you need a name, you need a different name for people who just jerk off to, like, German tanks and stuff like that, because it's not all the same. There's different levels of them. But that's one thing, is that you struck close to home when you get comments from people saying like, oh, I've never heard of a Wehraboo. Like, are the Wehraboos in the room with you now, or some meme like that, and then I get a lot of people who are, I remember, like, I pointed out in one video I did a while back about, the story of Hannibal in the Battle of Cannae. This was one of the greatest, like, decisive victories in history. But of course, Hannibal lost the war, and Carthage was utterly destroyed, right? And this was something that was brought up by Cathal Nolan in his book, The Allure of Battle, about how we have this idea that military history is about decisive battles and stuff, and really there's a lot of these cases of factions or commanders winning these great victories and then utterly losing the war, right? And I pointed this out, and one of these Wehraboos is like, well, Hannibal was still a great commander and very clever. And it's like, yes, but he lost the war and lost Carthage. You know what I mean? I mean, who else lost that badly? The Confederacy and Nazi Germany, I guess, right? But yeah, like, a lot of the arguments are people like, it's funny, like in that video I debunked some pretty common, easily debunked myths, and some of these people just like repeat them right back to me. Like, I can't tell you how many people say like, oh, you should read the memoirs of Sherman crewmen, it was a death trap. And it's like, yeah, but you notice those guys wrote memoirs because they survived the war? Think about why that might be. But yeah, a lot of them though, some comments I filter out because they just come from like literal straight up Nazis. Or a very common thing is because I made a video against Wehraboos, then I must be a communist. Because there's a lot of these people, they think, anybody, if you criticize the right, then you have to be a communist. Everyone's a communist. And I find it funny because, and I'm going to point this out in a future video, probably nobody did more for communism, for spreading communism, than the fascist and Imperial Japan, right? Basically, Japan's fascist. They did a lot to actually spread communism, because if you look at 1939, before Molotov-Ribbentrop in 1939, there were two nominally communist countries in the world. There was the Soviet Union and there was Mongolia, right? And what happens in 1939? The Soviets sign a pact with Nazi Germany, and suddenly communism is expanding, right? Soviet Union starts annexing territories. And so they expanded them. But then, of course, because of Germany's bungled invasion and war, the communists would basically take over half of Europe. And what are you doing up there, dude? Pretty clever. So they take over half of Europe, but also in Asia, as many of you know, the Japanese were mainly fighting the Chinese nationalists, and it was the Chinese nationalists who did the bulk of the fighting against the Japanese, contrary to a lot of Maoist propaganda. And so that means that when the Civil War broke out later, the nationalist government had, suffered more than the communists. And the other thing is that the Soviet Union invaded Manchuria, and they gave a lot of captured weapons to the communists that they would use. And so for that reason, you could argue that had a big influence, the Japanese invading, China, and their war in China had a big influence on the Chinese Civil War and the communists, eventually winning that, right? So, these Wehraboos, I mean, a lot of these, the Wehraboos who call me a commie are most likely like actual Nazis, you know what I mean? Because the ordinary Wehraboos who get mad at me are just people who are mad because I insulted their favorite tank or something like that. And that's dumb, but it's not nefarious. But some of these people, some of these comments, I usually just filter them out. They are, there was one guy took issue with what I said about Dresden. And he says, bombing civilians is funny to you. And I looked at the guy's avatar, and it is, I shit you not, Reinhard Heydrich. And it's like, look, dude, if you're going to pretend to care about civilians getting killed in bombings, make sure you change your fucking Reinhard Heydrich avatar first, because you're not fooling me. You know what I mean? I have a feeling like this dude usually did use a different avatar, and then this time he just kind of like forgot. And so, yeah, it's just the nonsense that I deal with on the internet. Still got 17 people, wow. I'm not even doing good most of these rounds. I'm trying to pay more attention to the conversation.
Grab what you need.
The unit 731 is not area expertise of mine. I never devoted much time to Pacific theater. I did read several major general histories of the Pacific War, but it never, it was never my main area of expertise. I should brush up on it. Who did that? Sometimes it's best to just back up. Oh yeah, I've actually had a few people who commented who were, I guess you would call them, Tojo boos. It's really disturbing, actually. But that's the thing about the internet and social media is everybody, everywhere you go, you're gonna encounter people that just say they look at the worst political ideologies and the worst people in history, and they're like, I think those things are good. You know what I mean? It's a lot of, when we talk about tankies or even Nazis on the internet, when it comes to Nazis, there's this dangerous, historically dangerous domestic terrorist neo-Nazi movement that we have to be vigilant about, right? But at the same time, on the internet, and this is what makes it hard. On the internet, there are also a lot of just sexually frustrated, dumb, internet-raised teenagers who basically, because they have no personality and they're so rejected, they think their solution is to be whatever people say is bad, I will say it's good. You know what I mean? And that's where you get people identifying as something like a neo-Khmer Rouge supporter, right? I've actually seen at least one time online somebody referring to themselves as a Pol Potist, which is so many levels of insane. Yeah, it's political contrarianism is a good term for it. Yeah, because the thing is, the internet, even if you're just using a forum or even if you're just on Twitter, the internet lets us sort of make our own identity and make a brand, and so sometimes people are LARPing or role playing and not really knowing it. And it's funny because like most of these people would probably never identify, like if they went on a date and they started talking about politics, like they probably wouldn't be like, oh yeah, I actually think the Khmer Rouge was good. You know, I think on some level they understand there's something seriously wrong with that. At least I hope so. But sometimes, like, you know, when you look at some of these people and the ideologies, whether it's like the alt-right or some of these, like, you know, tankies, and you wonder, like, how bad does your life have to be, you know, in terms of like your social life and your social standing? Like, how bad does it have to be to the point where, like, you think this is what you get some kind of satisfaction from, you know what I mean? I am really glad that guy gave me this advice about how to resupply faster, and that's really great. Shit. Let's get upstairs. Yeah, I mean, I used to, I did read some interesting stuff about like the resistance in the Philippines and everything, and like, yeah, what, I mean, pretty much anywhere the Japanese occupied, they did absolutely horrible shit. And, you know, it's weird how sometimes they don't get the same treatment, you know, they don't get the same treatment that the Nazis get, when really, like, they should, you know, they should be seen as the same way, because, yeah, their approach to, like, the racial supremacy was a bit different, but it doesn't matter. The results were the same, right? I mean, mass killings of you know, ordinary peasants and stuff like that. It was awful. And also, you know, another thing about Imperial Japanese Army and everything was the horrible, horrendous sexual assault, you know. Pretty much, again, anywhere they occupied. So, yeah, treating them as like being, you know, in some, like, how you say, less evil than the Nazis just makes no sense. They were absolutely awful. And it's appropriate that, you know, it just tells you so much about how evil the, you know, Germany was, that their biggest ally was the other super evil empire, right? And yeah, I feel that, you know, I feel that because of the atomic bombings, that's one reason why, you know, they get a different treatment. But, you know, realistically, like nobody brings up the firebombing of Tokyo. That killed, I believe, more civilians than possibly at least one of the atomic bombings. You know what I mean? And so there were a lot of things, you know, like you take D-Day, right? Like that. Oh, that's pretty much morally black and white, right? Like D-Day, good. Saving Private Ryan. Well, here's the reality of it: the liberation of Normandy, and you say the liberation of France in general. Well, in the Normandy campaign, basically with the preparatory bombings and you know, the subsequent bombings. After the invasion, they killed about 10,000 French civilians. Like, it was not clean, you know. We didn't have precision-guided weapons back then, and that's just the reality of what happened. But we all accept that this was necessary. The other options did not exist, and you know, this gets back to the atomic bombing. You know, you drop one bomb that has the power of all the, you know, incendiaries that they dropped on, like, Tokyo on a given night. What's the difference, honestly? And, you know, another thing about the atomic bombing is, you know, when you look at, like, what situation the country was in at the time and what the, you know, what the Japanese army was planning to do to defend the home islands, you know, you're looking at another like 10 million civilians that would have died, mostly in starvation, but also in like suicidal attacks. You know, the important thing was to end the war as soon as possible, you know, because people often fail to realize like how devastated, let's say, Europe and parts of the Soviet Union were. And just in general, like the world was devastated by that war. Entire villages were wiped off the map, and I'm responsible for the fire support here. Yeah, they wiped entire villages off the map, and you know, that was actually in the World at War documentary. The first episode opens with a video of Orador-sur-Glane, where there was a massacre by the SS, and it was like a massacre of all the inhabitants of this this town, right? And so, you know, people, even after the war had ended, like in Europe, people still starved to death. People died of disease because of the breakdown and, like, you know, the of infrastructure, right? And so what needed to happen was the end of the war. If the war didn't end, the suffering would go on, and probably millions more Japanese civilians would have died. So, I mean, it's just the you know, that's just, how you say, it's just the grim reality of that horrible war. And, you know, and that's the thing is, like, the real world is, you know, I hate to say it, but the real world is filled with, you know, trolley problems, right? Like, you know, how do you minimize pain and maximize happiness, right? Or in this case, happiness is like peace, not being in a horrible war. And yeah, I mean, that's just like I said, that's the grim reality of it. We don't need to like it. I'll tell you the worst thing about the atomic bombings is just the development of nuclear weapons in general. You know what I mean? I mean, because, well, I mean, everything that's happening in Ukraine right now, this wouldn't be happening like this if Russia couldn't, you know, so easily threaten all these countries with nuclear annihilation. If it weren't for nuclear weapons, I mean, look, Russia's losing to Ukraine right now. Like, if NATO said, yeah, we're getting involved, we're rolling in tanks, we're coming in with airstrikes, which probably they would, actually, at this point, if it weren't for, you know, these nuclear threats. And nuclear threats, which I consider to be empty, but of course, you know, decision makers, well, we can't afford to do that, you know. So that I understand. But that's the worst thing about the development of, you know, the atomic bombs and everything, is that it gave us nukes, and it put us in this tricky situation. And I mean, yes, nukes serve as a deterrent. Maybe, you know, maybe they have prevented wars from breaking out, or prevented wars from you know, conflicts from widening. But oh, look at that, 0 deaths. Okay. Anyway, since this is the end of the match, I think I'm going to sign off. It's been a long time. Hope this has been informative. I hope you've enjoyed this. A lot of people stuck with me, so I do appreciate that. As always, follow me on Twitter, and check out on in the description below for my Patreon. You can support me there, or consider donating to the fundraiser that you see on the right. So everyone, have a good night or a good day if you're waking up. If you are in the Philippines, I'm guessing it's daytime there now. So once again,